Chapter 2140. The two methods seem to have the same results. The world would return to order, and all living beings would be revived. However, the mysterious power consumed by the two methods was hundreds of times different, and the technique of using the mysterious power was extremely different. Looking at the means that Shu Si displayed at this time, Luo Fan couldn't help but secretly praise, and in his heart, he was very proud of himself for delegating power to Shu Si. While Luo Fan sensed the technique of using the mysterious power, Shu Si's method gradually progressed, and the many shadows around her gradually became more complete. Gradually, the living beings in the shadows came back to life. For most living beings, they could not even tell where they were right now. They could not tell that they were not in the real world, the real world. In this way, they naturally treated their deaths and the fact that they had died as their own illusions and some kind of illusory mental attack. For a moment, they were filled with lingering fear, and they felt inexplicably happy that they had escaped. Only an extremely small number of cultivators whose strength had reached an extremely high level could sense that something was wrong with the situation, and they could use their extraordinary wisdom to deduce what exactly had happened before. In an instant, furious roars sounded from everywhere, and powerful auras swept through the area that they could cover. The scene became messy. However, all of this proved that they had indeed been resurrected. Shu Si did not have the mood to pay attention to these changes. It must be known that the number of living beings that had died in this area had almost exceeded the limit of what could be described with numbers. The number of civilizations and space-times had reached a point that ordinary people would feel dizzy just by looking at it. It was easy to imagine how huge of a project it would be to restore the many worlds, restore the endless space-time, and revive the countless living beings. Even if she worked hard wholeheartedly, she might not be able to complete this task before the time limit was up. How could she still care about the shock in the hearts of the living beings that she had revived? After all, the project was too big. Even with Luo Fan's help, even if she had exhausted all of her efforts and was fully focused on this matter, when she finally completed it, 100,000 years had already passed. At this moment, the light around her body was already layered, and it was so complicated that unless one's vision was as powerful as Luo Fan's, one would not be able to distinguish its specific appearance, let alone distinguish the living beings within it. At this point, Shu Si's entire body was steaming. Boundless mysterious power shuttled and circulated around her body, naturally bringing her endless pressure. Her body was faintly unable to bear it. At this moment, Luo Fan hovered by the side and quietly looked at her. He carefully sensed the mysterious power in her body, and the traces of mysteries that were reflected in the circulation of the mysterious power. These 100,000 years were simply like a sumptuous feast to him, and it allowed his understanding of mysterious energy to unknowingly improve like the difference between the heavens and the earth. As for the methods that Shu Si used, he had already completely grasped them. Right now, if he were to do it again, he would definitely be able to do it more perfectly than Shu Si, and he would be faster as well. After all, he was now the true owner of this platform, and his control over the mysterious power was much greater than Shu Si's. At this moment, Shu Si suddenly opened her eyes and cried out softly. The mysterious power instantly exploded as if it had been detonated. Boundless mysterious power rushed out in all directions, directly wrapping up the countless shadows around her body. Together with the mysterious power, they were sent out in all directions. In the blink of an eye, they had already been sent out billions of light years away, slowly overlapping with this region. The mysterious power was more exquisite and mystical than all other powers. Although it was a distance of trillions of light years, it was nothing compared to this mysterious power. In just a flash, without the passage of time, they had already completely reached their final destination, reaching the position that the shadows originally corresponded to. At this moment, Shu Si's body seemed to have become thousands of times taller than before. On the platform, she was like a giant that could prop up the heavens and earth. She seemed to be looking down on everything in this world. Immediately after, She let out a soft cry, and the endless space-time trembled. The mysterious power began to produce indescribable changes, and the laws of space-time also began to produce indescribable changes. As this complicated and indescribable change occurred, the space-time that the shadows enveloped in various parts of this region also began to undergo subtle changes. As this change occurred, the shadows and the real world gradually began to fuse. As this happened, the illusions became real, and the real world became illusions. Finally, at a certain moment, when this fusion reached a certain limit, the two began to separate again. After they separated again, the illusions quickly turned into reality, and the real quickly turned into illusions. Just like this, they gradually became polar opposites, and an extremely mysterious scene appeared. The terrifying changes that covered billions of light years were displayed at this moment, and the light effects were enough to shock any cultivator to the point that they could not control themselves. After an unknown period of time, all the changes subsided. At this moment, the shadows that Shu Si had spent 100,000 years building without rest had completely replaced the many areas that the Guardian platform covered, becoming the reality of these areas. These areas had completely replaced the original appearance of order that was gradually being restored, and the various scenes before this disaster were restored. At this point, Shu Si finally let out a long breath, and an indescribable sense of relief appeared in her eyes. To her, the difficulty of controlling all these changes was secondary. More importantly, the pressure was really unbearable. Now that everything was finally settled, the pressure was finally completely lifted, so how could she not feel relaxed? Just as she was about to disperse the shadows, Luo Fan interrupted. "It's too much of a waste to disperse just like that. Let me handle it." Hearing this, Shu Si was taken aback, but she still nodded and said, "All right, what are you going to do?" Before she could finish speaking, Luo Fan had already used the strength of the mysterious power to directly seize control of the shadows. He directly grabbed the shadows, and with a sudden thought, the shadows suddenly condensed and then suddenly collapsed, turning into countless fragments that began to sprinkle over the entire area. The shadows were originally like shadows, and now that they had shattered into countless fragments, it looked like countless specks of light were sprinkling over the entire area. At the same time, the clouds in the sky above this area began to churn, and endless clouds and mist began to condense. In the blink of an eye, it had already begun to turn into boundless dark clouds. Shortly after, a heavy downpour descended from the sky, as if the heavenly river had been split apart, covering the sky and covering the earth. The heavy downpour and the specks of light fused together, gradually causing the rainwater to undergo some kind of subtle change. Because of this change, the nature of the rainwater seemed to become even more exquisite and mysterious. After the specks of light turned into the rainwater, they fell to the ground and began to fuse with it. The ground was like an extremely dry sponge, frantically absorbing the rainwater, absorbing the traces of nutrients and mysteries within it. Along with this change, the various things that seemed a little illusory due to the transformation from illusory to real began to be nourished once more. Gradually, a strong and resilient aura was released, as if it had been reinforced once more. Seeing this change, Shu Si had a look of realization on her face. She had already understood what Luo Fan was doing. After this realization, she felt a little ashamed. Ashamed that she actually did not think of doing this. What Luo Fan was doing now was to reintegrate the benefits that had been turned into nothingness during the transformation of the illusory and the various mysterious forces into the world. After all, the original order of the world and the original scenery of the living beings that she had constructed previously were only the various kinds of order and scenery before the disaster. Although this kind of construction was already quite perfect and could completely restore the various things before the disaster. However, that was only restoring it. After the disaster, although this area had suffered a great disaster and suffered irreparable damage, it could also be said to have obtained considerable benefits. Because of the integration of the various mysterious forces, it could be said to have obtained considerable benefits later on. This allowed the development prospects and development potential of this area to become stronger than before. Under such circumstances, after the transformation of the illusory and the real, the increased potential would naturally be converted into an illusion. If the illusion dissipated, the potential would naturally dissipate along with it. If that was the case, then the calamity this time would have been a waste of time. Shu Si and Luo Fan's actions were naturally equivalent to doing nothing. It was precisely because of this that Luo Fan had completely scattered the illusory figures and integrated the potential that originally belonged to this area back into this area. In this way, although this area had returned to its original appearance on the surface, the potential was completely different from before. It was completely in the state after the disaster. This method was actually not that difficult. Even Shu Si should be able to do it easily. However, it was a pity that Shu Si ultimately did not think of this due to the immense pressure. If it were not for Luo Fan's intervention, she would have completely scattered the illusory figures, along with the incomparably precious potential that was contained within them. After returning all the potential in this area, Luo Fan withdrew the mysterious forces and let out a long breath. Just as he was about to say something, waves of mysterious forces suddenly broke through the surrounding defense of this area and surged towards the inside of this area. The number of these mysterious forces was quite large. There were more than 7 million of them, and among them, all of the mysterious forces belonged to the owners of the tens of millions of mysterious forces that Luo Fan had previously cut off. In other words, among the owners of the tens of millions of mysterious forces, more than 7 million of them were waving their mysterious forces and charging over at this moment. Looking at their aggressive manner, it was obvious that they were not here to reminisce about the past with Luo Fan. At this moment, Shu Si turned pale with fright and shouted, "Oh no, they are coming for revenge." Shu Si was naturally aware of how Luo Fan dealt with the mysterious forces. At this moment, she immediately guessed the purpose of the arrival of more than 7 million mysterious forces. At this moment, she instinctively forgot that she was no longer the owner of this Guardian platform. She directly substituted herself as the Guardian platform and directly activated the mysterious forces. They turned into more than 7 million mysterious forces and rushed in all directions, intercepting more than 7 million mysterious forces. If it was just a mysterious force, then it naturally wouldn't be a problem for Shu Si, who had the support of the Guardian platform. After all, one sent the mysterious forces over from a boundless distance, and he had to overcome the boundless distance in order to exert some of his strength. On the other hand, the other didn't have to go through so much trouble at all. His foundation was in this area, and he could exert 100% of his strength. There was no doubt about the outcome. However, this time, it wasn't just one, but more than 7 million mysterious forces. With such a huge amount and such terrifying mysterious forces converging together, it was enough to completely destroy a large area without suffering any damage. Under such circumstances, the mysterious forces that Shu Si waved collapsed as soon as they came into contact with the 7 million mysterious forces. They didn't even have much effect on the mysterious forces before they were dispersed and vanished without a trace. As a result, those mysterious forces began to push forward, heading straight for the central platform of this area. At this moment, Luo Fan snorted coldly. With a thought, he directly took over the control of the mysterious forces. In an instant, the mysterious forces that had been dispersed suddenly condensed into more than 7 million mysterious forces. He instantly activated the hidden potential of the mysterious forces and turned them into more than 7 million Luo Fans. They blocked in front of the mysterious forces and directly bombarded them. Luo Fan's control over the mysterious forces was not something that Shu Si could compare with. Although it was the same mysterious forces, the power in his hands was worlds apart when compared to the power in Shu Si's hands. Although Shu Si's control of the mysterious forces was extremely ingenious, it ultimately didn't stimulate the potential of the mysterious forces enough. In the face of more than 7 million mysterious forces, the wine cup that couldn't resist at all shattered. However, although the potential of the mysterious forces was not fully stimulated under Luo Fan's control, the stimulation was many times stronger than Shu Xi's. Naturally, the power that was derived was also many times stronger than under Shu Xi's control. In this way, the 7 million mysterious forces transformed into Luo Fans instantly repelled the 7 million mysterious forces that had rushed into this area, causing those forces to stop charging towards the platform amidst loud rumbling sounds. They could only continuously surge in front of the Luo Fans, trying to eliminate the terrifying power that Luo Fans had sent out and continue charging forward. However, it was clear that Luo Fan wouldn't give them a chance to do so. At this moment, the Luo Fan that was formed by the mysterious forces did not stop moving. He raised his hand and grabbed at the air, lightly pointing his finger and easily dispersing the power that the mysterious forces possessed, so that none of the mysterious forces could continue advancing. "If you know what's good for you, retreat immediately," Luo Fan said at this moment. His voice directly penetrated the endless space-time and was directly sent to where the 7 million mysterious forces were located. It poured into them and was directly sent through the mysterious forces to where the owners of the mysterious forces were. "Oomph. Do you think you've already won?" A voice directly blasted towards Luo Fan at this moment through the mysterious forces. This voice didn't have the ability to directly transmit its voice to where Luo Fan was, but it could only be transmitted to the entire area. In an instant, the area was shaken, causing the space-time in this area to start vibrating frantically. All the living creatures in this area heard this terrifying voice that made it difficult for them to control themselves. "There's only one of you, and we have more than 7 million. Just lie there obediently and let each of us vent our frustrations. Otherwise, we wouldn't mind repeating the previous calamity that happened here a few more times." Another voice was heard, mixing with the previous commotion. The scene became even more shocking and terrifying. Along with this voice, the 7 million streams of mysterious energy became even more resolute. The force of the impact became even more powerful, and the might of the energy itself became even more terrifying. Due to this change, Luo Fan that was formed by the 7 million mysterious forces couldn't react in time and was pushed several light years away before it stabilized. "Since you don't want to accept my good intentions, then don't blame me for what I'm going to do," Luo Fan said indifferently at this moment. As he said that, he let out a soft shout, and a terrifying, mysterious force instantly gushed out from the platform beneath his feet. In the blink of an eye, it traversed the endless space-time and arrived at the edge of this area. It suddenly rose and shot up into the sky, instantly trying to separate this area from the outside world. Obviously, this kind of separation wasn't just limited to space-time. It was more targeted at the mysterious forces. Chapter 2141. At this moment, another wave of mysterious energy surged towards this area from all directions. Compared to the previous mysterious power's goal, which was to enter this area as deep as possible to fight against Luo Fan, these mysterious power that came later had already brewed terrifying power just outside this area. The moment they came into contact with the boundary of the area, their power had already reached its peak. As they erupted, they instantly destroyed the boundless world and space-time. They even twisted and shattered the laws and laws. Under such a change, the mysterious power controlled by Luo Fan bore the brunt of the impact and directly bore the impact of the endless mysterious power. Under the impact of the numerous mysterious powers, it was on the verge of collapse. It was simply difficult for it to truly converge and completely seal off the area, cutting off the connection between the numerous mysterious powers and their source. "Oh, I thought of this method." At this moment, Luo Fan revealed a strange smile. Although this method was a little sudden, it was not difficult to think of. "Come on, let's see what else you have up your sleeves." At this moment, a powerful sound came from mysterious power and spread throughout the entire area, causing countless sound waves to appear in the area. Due to the agitation of their emotions, there were slight flaws in their control over their own power, causing the sound waves to be augmented with wisps of mysterious power. They naturally gave rise to all sorts of unimaginable changes. They directly condensed into various forms and displayed countless complicated and mysterious scenes in the void. Faced with such changes, Luo Fan's expression did not change at all. However, with a slight thought, a large area began to tremble slightly. The mysterious power itself came from the space-time, laws, living beings, order, and everything else in this area. In the past, he did not understand the essence of the mysterious power, so he could naturally only use this platform to control it. However, now that he had completely understood the essence of this mysterious power, he finally had the possibility to break free from the shackles of the platform and directly control the mysterious power in this entire area. Under his control, these regions gradually underwent subtle changes. Strands of subtle energy began to seep out of everything in this region and gradually gathered in the void. In the end, it turned into a power that was similar to the mysterious power, but it was fundamentally different from the mysterious power. Compared to the mysterious power, this power was naturally many times weaker. However, compared to the mysterious power, it had an indescribable advantage, which was that its foundation was too strong. Everything in this area was its foundation. However much it lost, the foundation would naturally replenish it. If one wanted to go against these powers, it would be the same as going against the overall power of this entire area. Originally, this area was easily destroyed by the mysterious forces that were countless times weaker than these mysterious forces. There was no way for the mysterious forces to resist at all. In fact, the mysterious forces did not even treat this area as a target, but as a byproduct of the battle. Now, in the face of a mysterious power that was many times stronger than those mysterious powers from back then, these powers that had been born from this region had already displayed a sufficiently powerful advantage. Although they had yet to truly come into contact or collide, the momentum of the two was already on par with each other. This might seem like a contradiction, but the principle behind it could not be any simpler. Previously, that region was easily destroyed by the aftermath of the impact of the weak, mysterious power, which was equivalent to a large country without any army being easily massacred and destroyed under the oppression of an army that was countless times smaller in number. This situation was naturally extremely normal. But now, this area was equivalent to a large country where everyone was a soldier. Every citizen had already picked up a weapon and had gone through countless rigorous training to obtain super powerful combat strength. In this situation, even if the army was 10 times or 100 times larger, it was still far from the number of citizens of a large country like China. It was obvious that it would fall into a disadvantageous position and gradually be destroyed. Therefore, the current situation of this area seemed contradictory, but it was actually extremely reasonable. The various subtle, mysterious powers began to surge at this moment and began to condense into various indescribable states. They began to pounce into the mysterious power, creating an unimaginable conflict with the mysterious power. Amidst the conflict, the power that had condensed in this area was constantly scattered and eliminated. However, it was constantly being reborn and replenished with new power at every moment. Moreover, the replenished power even responded to the damage that the previous power had received, causing the effect of the previous attack to weaken. For those mysterious forces, this situation was simply like encountering a sticky candy bomb that stuck to them. It was an extremely uncomfortable feeling. How is this possible? How can he do this? Impossible. He has only become a guardian for a few 100,000 years. How can he surpass us? Chaotic cries of surprise rang out from the mysterious power, which contained endless shock, disbelief, and an indescribable sense of defeat. You can actually do this? At this moment, Shu Si, who was next to Luo Fan, could not help but reveal a shocked expression. She looked at Luo Fan as if she was looking at an incomprehensible supreme existence. She knew that what Luo Fan had been doing all this time had exceeded her imagination, and these incomprehensible things might have given him an ability that she could not understand. However, she never would have thought that this ability would be so powerful. It could even reach the highest realm of the legendary guardian, completely controlling the area they guarded and becoming the absolute master of that area. That's right. What Luo Fan was doing now was a legend that had existed since ancient times. It was a legend that the Guardian's ability was at the peak. In that legend, if any Guardian could display their ability to the peak, they could become the true, absolute master of the area they guarded. At that time, he would coexist with that region. As long as the world in that region was not destroyed, even if the protective platform was destroyed, even if his existence was completely erased, he would be able to survive. Moreover, he would survive without suffering any injuries. Moreover, once the protector of a certain region attained this realm, then the region they guarded would become impregnable. From then on, no power would be able to threaten that region. It was even to the extent that the destruction of the world would have to depend on whether the ruler of that region agreed to it. Luo Fan listened to Shu Si's words, but his expression was rather indifferent. He did not know that there was such a legend in this world, but if he did, he would not feel that he needed to be moved. This was because, in reality, he had indeed become the master of this area. After he completely grasped the essence of the mysterious power, he had truly grasped the entire area that the platform's power radiated. For him, any power, any rule or law in this area was already under his control. At least, he could control it with the help of the mysterious power. For guardians like Shu Si, this kind of control was enough to make them wake up from their dreams with a smile. It was enough to make them feel that they had nothing else to ask for in their lives. However, for him, who had long been accustomed to deep control, this kind of control was still far from enough. Whether it was the control of the eternal heaven and earth in the second level of the road to Tao Master, or the control of the world that he had created, it was far more profound than this kind of control. Under such circumstances, how could he feel excited because of this kind of control? The fact that he did not feel dissatisfied already proved that his will was strong enough and his mentality was perfect enough. At this time, the fighting spirit in the hearts of the masters of the mysterious power gradually began to shrink. Unknowingly, a wave of mysterious power began to retreat and was about to leave this area. Then, a second wave, a third wave, a fourth wave. In just a short period of time, the coalition army, formed by more than 7 million guardians, had collapsed. Waves of mysterious power began to recede like a tide, constantly surging out of this area. For these guardians, the strength that Luo Fan had shown now was already beyond their imagination. This kind of ability to become a master had made it impossible for them to really hurt him. In this way, it would be useless to continue to entangle here. Under such circumstances, it was simply a performance of extreme stupidity, but it was not the Guardian style at all. Want to leave now? Seeing that the mysterious power had retreated, Luo Fan did not intend to let them go. He just said lightly, with this sentence, the strange power that filled the infinite space-time in this area began to surge and chase after the mysterious power. In his eyes, this mysterious power was not just an ordinary power. It represented everything in the world and represented the potential of this area. If these mysterious powers had originally been in their respective platforms and areas, he would have had the urge to seize them. Now that these mysterious powers have been sent over and placed right in front of his mouth, how could he let them go? Sir, do you want to kill us all? At this time, angry roars came from the mysterious power. However, from Luo Fan's actions, they could see Luo Fan's murderous intent. Panic and anger arose in their hearts, causing them to roar one by one. It must be known that although Luo Fan had become a master and achieved the achievements that they had all been looking forward to, it was impossible for them to obtain any benefits in this area of Luo Fans in the long run. However, this did not mean that they were completely unable to resist Luo Fan at this time. The reason why they retreated at this time was because there was not much hope in the future. They were not fleeing like stray dogs. With such a mentality, how could they sit back and watch Luo Fan be so overbearing? Hearing their words, Luo Fan only smiled faintly and said, "More than 7 million of you are not here for a vacation." As he said this, his movements became more and more ferocious, and his attacks against the mysterious power became more and more powerful. Under this kind of attack, the power gathered in this area was greatly damaged, but the mysterious power was also being eliminated bit by bit. It was constantly being scattered and integrated into this area, increasing the potential of this area. During this process, this area became fiercer and fiercer. The power gathered also became more and more condensed, more and more powerful, and its might became more and more terrifying. As a result, the mysterious power naturally left behind more and more in this area. Fight it out with him. Finally, the owner of the mysterious power was truly enraged. With that roar, a mysterious force no longer retreated, but charged back and crashed into the depths of the region. It crashed into the endless power and began to release boundless might. It destroyed everything in a frenzy, twisted time and space, destroyed the world, destroyed the laws, and slaughtered all living beings. In the face of such a reaction, Luo Fan only faintly smiled. With a slight thought in his heart, the mysterious energy that permeated the entire area began to slightly condense. In an instant, a portion of it had already begun to condense towards the mysterious energy. In an instant, with a tremble, it had already directly cut off the connection between the mysterious energy and the outside world. As the connection was cut off, the mysterious power suddenly became dispirited and only had an instinctive reaction left. It could no longer be as agile as when it was under the protector's control. Although the mysterious power could still cause destruction in the surroundings and could still clash with the various mysterious powers in the surroundings, there wasn't much effect left. After being cut up by the mysterious power a few times, it easily scattered the key points. In the end, it completely collapsed and turned into countless fragments that fused with the area. As it fused with the mysterious power, the damage it caused before started to recover. The world returned to order, and the dead beings were revived. Everything seemed to be going back in time. Seeing this, the mysterious power was finally truly shocked. Since the mysterious power was so easily cut up and devoured, it meant that Luo Fan had already comprehended the trick to dealing with their mysterious power. This also meant that if they were to stay here for a little longer, the fate of the mysterious force before them might very well be theirs. When they realized this, how could the anger in their hearts from Luo Fan's attitude still remain? All of them pretended to be deaf and started to frantically flee in the direction they came from. If they still had some elegance when they fled before and didn't know that they were stray dogs, then at this moment, the feeling of stray dogs on them was many times stronger than before. Facing such a situation, Luo Fan only faintly smiled. He wasn't worried that they would really escape. "It seems that this method will work," he said calmly. Soon after, the edge of the region, which was currently enduring the repeated attacks from the mysterious energy from the outside world, collapsed and gathered again and again, trembled slightly before suddenly collapsing. It transformed into an endless mysterious energy that began to spew in all directions. In the blink of an eye, it had already formed an isolation layer that was as vast as an unknown number of worlds around the boundary. This isolation layer continued to crumble under the impact of the external mysterious energy. However, it continued to reform under the support of this region, vaguely forming a dynamic balance. Since the mysterious power was condensed from everything in this area, then the mysterious power could naturally be broken down into the mysterious power that was condensed from everything in this area. Compared to the mysterious power was much inferior in quality, but it had an advantage that the mysterious power did not have. That was, its recovery speed was countless times faster than that of the mysterious power. It was precisely because of this that the isolation layer was able to form such a dynamic balance. After all, in Luo Fan's eyes, the mysterious power was countless times weaker than the mysterious power. However, it still possessed some characteristics of the mysterious power. In the eyes of the Guardians who didn't understand the essence of the mysterious power, it was actually quite mysterious. If they wanted to deal with the mysterious power, they could only use a similar method to deal with the mysterious power. Obviously, this method was not targeted, so the effect it could display was naturally quite limited. The final result was that the mysterious power's destruction speed was only a little faster than that of the mysterious power. The recovery speed was countless times faster, but the destruction speed was only a little faster. Under this situation, the dynamic balance that originally couldn't be formed was naturally easily formed. As the dynamic balanced isolation layer was formed, the Guardians' hearts thumped. The effect of the isolation layer formed by the mysterious power was much weaker than the isolation layer formed by the mysterious power, but still had some effect. At this moment, it had just formed, but it had already weakened their perception of the mysterious power that they had sent in. Chapter 2142. At this moment, what the Guardians were worried about happened. The endless mysterious power started to undergo all sorts of indescribable and complicated changes. Amidst these changes, various powers that completely targeted the mysterious power were born. Under this power of interception, the more than 7 million mysterious powers each suffered an indescribable impact. The owners of the mysterious powers, in other words, the Guardian senses towards the mysterious power that poured into this area, were rapidly weakened. Not long after, due to the various changes, the protectors all felt the same feeling they had felt before. The pain of the mysterious power being cut off, the backlash from the platform, and the abnormal movements in the entire area they controlled all swarmed towards them at this moment, causing them to suffer heavy injuries. These Guardians who couldn't swallow their anger and wanted to go against Luo Fan and make Luo Fan suffer were all the Guardians who had suffered when Luo Fan cut off the mysterious power back then. They had already suffered such a huge loss before, and the injuries they had suffered had yet to fully recover. Their wounds had only just healed, yet they suffered such a backlash again. The reaction seemed to be even more intense and tragic than before. Boom, 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 boom. Incomparably shocking booms sounded from all directions in the world. Space-time collapsed one after another, and the Guardian platforms shook one after another. Even though they were separated by an endless distance, Luo Fan could still easily sense it through the Guardian platforms. Among the more than 7 million Guardians, even the luckiest and strongest Guardians suffered an unimaginable impact during this process. Their bodies exploded, and it took a long time for them to recover. As for the unlucky or weak Guardians, they were even directly sealed by the Guardian platforms. Those who were too unlucky were directly thrown out by the Guardian platforms and deprived of their Guardian identities. This tragic outcome shocked the Guardians who sensed this change. The Guardians who originally wanted to fish in troubled waters and take advantage of the battle between Luo Fan and them finally gave up on this idea completely. At this moment, they retracted their heads deep into their tortoise shells and didn't dare to poke their heads out again. They just reap what they sow. At this moment, Shu Si sighed and said in an extremely aloof tone. She was the original Guardian of the area that Luo Fan was in. To her, even though she had lost her identity as a Guardian, it wasn't enough for her to completely ignore the deep feelings she had for this area. Under such circumstances, the other Guardians attacked this area one after another. Naturally, she hated them to the core. Seeing them suffer misfortune, there was no need to mention the comfort in her heart. Luo Fan didn't care about Shu Si's excitement. At this moment, he just manipulated the strange power that filled the entire area and began to disintegrate the mysterious power that had been cut off. He shattered the mysterious power bit by bit, devoured it bit by bit, and integrated it into this area to enhance the potential of this area and increase the support for the mysterious power in this area. Mysterious power was mysterious power after all. Even if it had been cut off, it was impossible to deal with it easily with its own characteristics. Under such circumstances, even if the strange power was controlled by Luo Fan, it could only speed up the process slightly, but couldn't complete the devouring process immediately. As for why he could devour the mysterious power so easily before, it was because Luo Fan gathered the power of the entire area together. The current situation was completely different from before. Now, there were more than 7 million mysterious powers waiting for this area to devour. The difficulty of controlling it was countless times greater than before. Luo Fan's expression was extremely calm as he controlled the strange power to disintegrate the mysterious power. During this process, he also constantly comprehended the essence of the mysterious power and carefully dug out the deep mysteries of the mysterious power. After all, although the strange power already contained a trace of the mysterious power, it was only a trace. In the depths of the mysterious power, there were countless more profound mysteries than the strange power. If he wanted to truly understand this mysterious power and even the mysteries hidden at the extremely high place, he naturally needed to continue working hard and moving forward, but he couldn't be complacent because of this small achievement. Under the effect of the strange power that Luo Fan controlled, the mysterious power was devoured one after another. As each mysterious power was devoured, the area underwent a subtle change. It seemed to become stronger, more real, and more mysterious. Just like that, several tens of thousands of years passed. After several tens of thousands of years, when Luo Fan finally controlled the strange power to completely devour all the mysterious power, the entire area started to tremble slightly. Endless mysterious rays of light appeared in the sky above the area, flowing like water and illuminating the entire area, making the entire area seem sacred and unbelievable. At this moment, faced with this change, Luo Fan only had an indescribable expression on his face as he raised his head to look at the sky. In his eyes, there was a river that flowed endlessly in the void. That river was none other than the supreme mystery that he had only caught a glimpse of in the past. The reason why he could see this mystery now was very simple. It was because the platform beneath his feet had undergone an extremely fundamental transformation. The mysterious power in the platform came from this area that covered an unknown amount of space. In other words, the growth of this area would naturally feed back to the mysterious power in the platform, and this would also naturally feed back to the platform itself. In this way, the reason for this change was very obvious. Naturally, it was because after this entire area had devoured over 7 million mysterious forces, the essence of this area had crossed a certain boundary, and it had finally triggered the platform to cross a certain boundary as well, allowing him to obtain abilities that he didn't have before. This seemed unbelievable, but it was actually very normal. After all, the 7 million mysterious powers were released by the 7 million protectors as they planned to teach Luo Fan a lesson and take revenge on Luo Fan. The amount was so great that although it was not enough to completely hollow out the protector's platform, it was still enough to create 10 to 20% of the mysterious powers that he could control. Under such circumstances, the total number of over 7 million strands of mysterious energy had obviously reached an unimaginable level. Apart from the fact that they had just recovered from their injuries, one of the main reasons why the Guardians were punished so severely was that they had caused great damage to the platform. With so many mysterious powers completely integrated into this area, one could naturally imagine the great impact it had on this area. I finally see you with my own eyes. Looking at the mysterious long river in the sky, Luo Fan finally let out a long sigh. With a slight thought, his eyes narrowed, and his senses began to quickly extend upwards. He wanted to directly explore the long river and directly plunder the endless mysteries in the long river. If he could directly sense the various things in the long river, he naturally wouldn't need to guard this platform and experience it indirectly through the mysterious powers in the platform. At that time, he could directly immerse himself in the mysterious long river and wholeheartedly comprehend the principles and mysteries within it. Unfortunately, the result was clearly not as good as he expected. Although he could already use his eyes to see the mysterious long river with the help of the platform. However, When his senses probed over, he did not come into contact with any aura that belonged to the mysterious long river at all. In his senses, there was simply nothing there, not even an image existed, let alone using his senses to explore the long river, to comprehend the mysteries. As expected, it still doesn't work. After trying hard for millions of times, and finally realizing that there was no way, Luo Fan could only sigh and slowly withdraw his senses. After withdrawing his senses, he did not look at the mysterious long river anymore, but cast his gaze in another direction. In that direction that extended in the opposite direction to an extremely far distance away, there was a protector platform quietly standing there. The protector of that platform had now disappeared, and the entire platform was empty. Currently, who knew how many hundreds of millions of cultivators were engaged in a fierce battle around the platform? Evidently, they were fighting for the position of protector. In fact, this kind of thing would inevitably happen after almost every protector platform became empty. The protector platform itself was closely related to the survival of the area it was in. If the protector platform lost its owner, then the defensive ability of the area would naturally be greatly reduced. As for the platform itself, it would also become weaker because of this region. Therefore, every time the protector platform lost its owner, the platform would instinctively attract countless cultivators to compete for the position of protector. Therefore, every time a protector disappeared, the surroundings of the platform would inevitably fall into a long period of fighting. This time, it had only been tens of thousands of years since the protector was chased away by the platform, but it was only the beginning of the fight. According to previous experience, this fight would at least take tens of millions of years. Sure enough, I can only start from this aspect. With the help of the connection between the protector platforms, Luo Fan sensed the platform, and such a thought flashed through his mind. With that thought, he said to Shu Si, "I'll leave this place to you." Shu Si was slightly taken aback. "What do you mean?" As soon as she said this, she realized that the cultivator who had forcefully taken away the protector platform had already disappeared in front of her. Even with the power of the protector platform, she couldn't detect his existence at all. "He left just like that?" Shu Si murmured in disbelief. Luo Fan's actions simply subverted her worldview. One must know that protectors had unimaginable authority, but at the same time, they also had unimaginable responsibilities. This kind of responsibility made the protector platform inevitably restrict the protector. If the protector was weak, he wouldn't even be able to leave the area of the platform. Even the most powerful protector couldn't leave the area protected by the protector platform. But now, right in front of her just a moment ago, Luo Fan had directly left the platform and even left this area. How could this not make her feel incredulous? However, even though it was unbelievable, Shu Si still instinctively occupied the platform and began to fuse with it. With the help of the mysterious power of the platform, she began to sense the entire area and protect it. It's changed so much. When she used the platform to sense the entire area again, Shu Si couldn't help but have an indescribable and complicated expression. Although she knew that the area had undergone earth-shattering changes when she saw the little changes earlier, and its essence had improved a lot, she was only watching from the side. However, she was only watching from the side after all. With her ability, the range of her vision was quite limited. Therefore, it wasn't intuitive at all. Only now, when she truly used the platform to sense the entire area, did she truly understand the extent of the changes. Only then could he truly ascertain just how much benefit this region had received from devouring the mysterious energy. Now, compared to before, the entire area was like a paradise compared to hell. In this area, there were all kinds of mysterious sceneries that were previously unimaginable. There were all kinds of cultivation, holy lands that were countless times more powerful than before, and all kinds of heavenly materials and earthly treasures. Shu Si, who was extremely familiar with the situation in this area, felt dizzy. At this moment, she couldn't help but feel an indescribable sense of frustration in her heart. Perhaps it's countless times better for him to treat this protector than me. Under this sense of frustration, her feelings for Luo Fan suddenly changed subtly. An emotion called obedience began to appear in her heart for the first time. Luo Fan couldn't care less about the changes in Shu Xi's thoughts. At this moment, he had already crossed the area that covered an unknown area and directly stepped into the area guarded by another protector platform. In other words, in the area guarded by the protector platform that had no owner, and countless cultivators were constantly fighting for the position of protector. If he had his normal ability, even if he could easily pass through that area, it would definitely take some time. It was impossible for him to cross such a long distance in a flash and enter another area. However, he was now the true owner of the protector platform, and he could easily control every mysterious power in it. Under such circumstances, with the help of the mysterious power, he easily closed the distance between time and space. With a step, he had already completed the time and space that would normally take a long time to cross, and directly stepped into another area. It's a pity that those mysterious powers can't follow me. Stepping into this area and feeling the subtle pressure that was everywhere, Luo Fan couldn't help but sigh. He was the protector of another area. Although he had completely refined the protector platform, causing him to not be shackled by the platform and be able to leave the area guarded by the platform, his identity as a protector could not disappear. This identity naturally had great benefits for him in the area that he was guarding. However, if he left the area that he was guarding, it would be a rather strong shackle. At this moment, he was just standing there without moving, but the protector platform in this area was already staring at him. The mysterious power was already brewing in the void, and it could pour endless power at him at any time. Facing such changes, Luo Fan could only sigh. He used his ability to teleport again and again towards the protector platform that was billions of light years away from where he was. As he got closer to the protector platform, the deterrence he felt from the mysterious power grew stronger. It even vaguely formed an inexplicable pressure that began to form a subtle obstruction to him. It even gradually slowed down his speed, causing his speed to be affected more and more obviously, and in the end, he became slower and slower. After knowing that the protector platform was eyeing him covetously, Luo Fan already knew that this situation would inevitably appear. At this moment, he was not surprised at all, and even his expression did not change at all. As he got closer to the area of the protector platform, he seemed to sense that the battle in that area seemed to be getting more and more intense. The chaotic aura produced by the battle also became more and more chaotic. It seemed that the many cultivators who were fighting for the position of the protector felt some kind of danger and wanted to end this battle as soon as possible so that a protector could be born as soon as possible. It was a pity that the number of cultivators fighting for the position was too many. Even if they wanted to speed up the process, it was impossible to end this battle in a short period of time. After all, this was a battle that would have taken millions of years to end. Even if they sped up the process to a heaven-defying degree, even if they sped up the process by 1,000 or 10,000 times, it would still take hundreds or even thousands of years to end. Chapter 2143. When he arrived at this location, what entered Luo Fan's eyes was an incomparably tragic Azura battlefield. Among them, there were billions of powerful cultivators fighting one another. At every moment, there were thousands of cultivators, be they strong or weak, being torn apart by various powers. Endless power was released, stirring up the surrounding space-time and stirring up the endless laws and laws. The Guardian platform was at the center of the Azura battlefield, in a place that seemed both real and illusory. It seemed like it existed, but it also seemed like it didn't exist. At this moment, the cultivators closest to the platform were already below it. They even felt like they could touch the platform if they stretched out their hands. It was a pity that even the cultivators closest to the platform were fighting with many other cultivators. In fact, compared to the outside world, the fighting here was even more intense, and the casualties were even more disastrous. There was no other reason. Although they were only one step away from the platform, this one step was like a natural moat that firmly blocked everyone's path. This was because at this moment, the platform was simply under the protection of the mysterious power. No matter how strong one was, no matter how great one's means were, and no matter how close one was, as long as one did not grasp the mysterious power, one could only wait for the platform to take the initiative to accept one. Only then would one have a chance of stepping onto the platform. Obviously, although the Guardian platform wanted to find a new Guardian as soon as possible because of Luo Fan's arrival, it was only a platform after all. It was not a real living being and did not have a complete will. Therefore, it was impossible for it to do something as urgent as this. In other words, even at this moment, it still had to wait for a truly qualified Guardian to appear before it could accept that cultivator as a Guardian. In other words, they still had to go through an extremely tragic battle before they could find a most suitable Guardian for this platform. And this was obviously where Luo Fan's opportunity lay. "Looks like my luck is not bad," Luo Fan murmured. His figure did not stop, and he seemed to be moving slowly, but he was actually moving quickly toward the Guardian platform. With every step he took, he seemed to directly traverse a distance of who knew how many light years. He stepped into the range of the Guardian platform selection and invaded the main body of the Guardian platform. As he moved forward, his figure seemed to gradually become illusory and real, as if he was gradually assimilating with the platform, becoming an existence of the same nature as the platform. At first, this change did not attract the attention of the cultivators who were all supreme emperors. They continued to fight fiercely, and they only had eyes for each other. But as time passed, as Luo Fan got closer and closer to the platform, his calm expression became more and more conspicuous. Following that, more and more cultivators noticed his existence, and gazes gathered on him from all directions. Following these gazes, the slaughter in the surroundings gradually calmed down. Finally, at a certain moment, all the cultivators discovered Luo Fan and his movements after being alerted by the other cultivators. That incomparably brutal slaughter finally came to an end. The entire Shura battlefield within a radius of who knows how many light years fell into a strange silence. "Who are you?" A shout broke out from the group of cultivators at this moment, and it surged towards Luo Fan like rolling thunder. However, this kind of shout was obviously nothing to Luo Fan. He did not even need to use any power to resist. Just his current state was enough to easily repel all the power mixed in the sound waves. He immediately glanced at the source of the sound waves below. It was a cultivator who had the absolute upper hand in the battle, and his strength was faintly close to the tribulation initiation realm. At this moment, this cultivator had already climbed halfway up the platform, and there were waves of power around him that were resonating with the platform. He was trying his best to make the mysterious power that was as heavy as heaven and earth resonate with him. Beside him and behind him, there were densely packed cultivators eyeing him covetously. Below him, there were countless mixed auras of death, indicating how many cultivators had died here. If it wasn't for Luo Fan, this cultivator was very likely to become the guardian of this platform. In other words, in the eyes of this cultivator, Luo Fan's current behavior was like pulling a tooth out of a tiger's mouth, forcibly robbing him of his identity as the guardian. How could this cultivator not be angry? How could not be the first one who couldn't help but shout? "This is not a place you can set foot in," Luo Fan just said lightly at this time. As he spoke, he casually waved his hand, and a mysterious power swept past. It instantly crossed time and space, penetrated endless barriers, and directly sent the cultivator hundreds of millions of light years away, as if it was reversing karma. In the eyes of many cultivators, that cultivator had completely disappeared after the strange newcomer spoke. It was as if he had never appeared in the first place for a time. An inexplicable disturbance arose among the cultivators, and all kinds of indescribable panic emerged in the hearts of the cultivators, causing them to cower. If Luo Fan used a powerful method to deal with that cultivator, although they felt that he was difficult to deal with, they wouldn't cower so easily, and they wouldn't lose the courage to fight for the identity of the Guardian because of this. After all, this was a Guardian. This identity was simply like a supreme overlord in this vast expanse of the heavens and the earth, and its authority and influence was unimaginable. More importantly, after obtaining the identity of a protector, one's cultivation would be so convenient that it would reach an unimaginable level. Faced with such benefits, even if there was only a 1 in a trillion chance, they would definitely not give up. Moreover, no matter how they looked at it, the probability was more than 1 in a trillion. However, this was only when Luo Fan used a powerful method that they could understand to deal with his opponent. Now that Luo Fan used a mysterious method that they could not understand at all, it was similar to the mysterious method that the Guardian used. This made them all horrified. For cultivators of their level, the only thing that was truly difficult to resist was the mysterious method. Apart from the mysterious method, no matter how powerful it was, they would definitely be able to find a way to deal with it as long as they had enough time. However, they could not find a way to resist the mysterious method that they could not understand at all. This was because they could not understand it, so it was impossible for them to know the principle behind it. It was impossible for them to know the principle behind it, so it was naturally impossible for them to find a way to interrupt the principle, and it was naturally impossible for them to resist this method. Once the opponent had such a method, then it would obviously be extremely easy to deal with existences like them. In particular, this cultivator had forcefully demonstrated it in front of them just now, which made them even more aware of how dangerous this cultivator before them was. With this sense of danger, they began to wake up and retreat began to sound in their hearts. Following that, the cultivators in the outer circle began to retreat, turning into rays of light and rushing out of this area. Their departure gave the other cultivators an example, causing them to make the same choice as them. They turned into rays of light and left. As more and more cultivators made this choice, the number of cultivators in this area began to decrease. It was as if this area had turned into a land of fine sand, and a hole had appeared below it. The fine sand began to flow out of the hole continuously. Seeing the behavior of the many cultivators, Luo Fan no longer had any interest in paying attention to them. At this moment, he turned his head and once again fixed his gaze on the Guardian platform in the center, continuously approaching it. The closer he got to the platform, the stronger the repulsive force acting on his body. This repulsive force did not come from anything else, but from the mysterious power within his body that belonged solely to him. It was the endless mysterious power that existed on the platform that repelled all mysterious powers that were different from it. This repulsive force clearly continued to grow stronger as the distance between the two shortened. However, it was obvious that Luo Fan did not care about this repulsive force. No matter how strong this repulsive force was, he just continued to advance step by step towards the platform, completely ignoring this repulsive force that could be called a warning from the platform. As the distance between him and the platform closed to a certain limit, flames suddenly rose on the platform in an instant. This flame was an extremely strange green color. The moment the flame appeared, the surrounding temperature skyrocketed by who knew how many times. Even the laws in the surroundings began to distort and become chaotic, causing the endless heaven and earth that filled the void to continuously collapse and release all sorts of incredible power that swept through the surroundings like waves. Facing this upheaval, the many cultivators who originally wanted to stay here felt an irresistible and terrifying danger approaching them. How could they still dare to stay here? In an instant, all of them roared and quickly rushed out of this area. These cultivators were at least at the false sage stage. Although they were extremely weak here and had no chance of successfully obtaining a guardian, their absolute strength was enough to make almost 99% of the cultivators admire them. However, his absolute strength was enough to make 99% of the cultivators admire him. With this kind of strength, flying away was a piece of cake for them. The moment the green flame appeared on the platform, half of the hundreds of millions of cultivators in this area disappeared. In another breath's time, all the cultivators had disappeared. The surroundings became empty once again, leaving only the endless aura of death lingering in the surroundings. Looks like your plan has failed. Luo Fan said indifferently to the platform at this moment. At this moment, the mysterious power in his body trembled and instantly turned into a flame that started burning on the surface of his body. This flame was not green like the one on the platform. Instead, it was gray, as if it was in a chaotic state. Furthermore, compared to the green flames, the grayish flames also seemed to be in a chaotic state. Time, space, matter, energy, and everything else seemed to have become extremely chaotic. The instant it appeared, it produced an unimaginable corrosive assimilation effect on everything in the surroundings, causing the surrounding space-time, the surrounding nomological laws, the surrounding energy, and everything else to be continuously transformed into a kind of dusky flame that continuously converged towards this flame. This flame was a method of using the mysterious power that he had thought of over the past few days. Or rather, it was a hidden change in the mysterious power that he had not discovered before. After all, no matter how powerful the mysterious power was and how high its essence was, it was only a type of power. As a power, it was naturally the foundation of the mystique and the driving force of the ability. Just relying on this mysterious power to attack was like using gasoline to drown the enemy, a reckless waste of God's resources, therefore. While he was comprehending the essence of the mysterious power, he was also constantly developing the magical uses of the mysterious power and the mystique of the mysterious power. This gray flame was one of the results of his development. The moment the gray flame started to rise, the mysterious power on the platform in front of him started to riot. Waves of mysterious power constantly poured into the green flame, causing it to rise and expand continuously. In just a short span of a few breaths, the cyan flame had grown from a small ball to one that filled the heavens and the earth. It was like a huge canopy that stood above the platform. As it grew, the influence it caused was also magnified. The influence on the surrounding space-time, the surrounding laws, and the surrounding power began to increase. In just a few breaths, the space-time within a range of tens of thousands of light years had been completely transformed into the domain of the green flame. In other words, it was completely distorted and became independent from the outside world. This must be a trace of magical power left by a former guardian. Luo Fan looked at this scene, and this thought flashed in his mind. The reason why he made such a guess was very simple. It was because he sensed a natural, sluggish will in the flame that was different from the platform. This kind of will was incomparably stubborn, incomparably tenacious, and even incomparably intelligent. It controlled the flames to carry out a series of indescribably complex changes, causing the green flames to derive all sorts of incredible power in the process. In the end, it even formed a domain of green flames that separated this place from the outside world. This method was clearly not something that could be done by the instincts of the Guardian platform that did not understand the urgency of the situation. In addition, there were no more Guardians on the platform now. Although the will was agile and tenacious, it was ultimately slightly different from the living beings that were still alive, which made him make such a guess. Sure enough, even if it's just a Guardian, there are still some powerhouses that are powerful enough to move people. Looking at this scene, Luo Fan could not help but have such a thought flash in his mind. Before this, he actually did not think too highly of the Guardians that were born from the tribulations. After all, the pathetic performance of Shu Si and the 7 million or so Guardians really made him look down on them. However, now that he saw the traces of the mystique left behind by a Guardian of the previous generation, he knew that his previous view was probably wrong. This mystique was clearly created by someone who had a deep understanding of the mysterious power, or even someone like him who had comprehended a certain aspect of the mysterious power. The previous generation of Guardians had such a powerhouse. Then, what about this generation? Luo Fan's heart moved slightly, and another thought flashed through his mind. For a moment, he felt an inexplicable sense of anticipation. Battling with a powerhouse was not what he had been looking forward to the most. After all, he was not a martial arts fanatic or battle fanatic. What he was really looking forward to at this moment was that if there was a powerhouse who had also comprehended a certain aspect of the mysterious power, it could greatly reduce the time he needed to comprehend the mysterious power. As long as he could find such a powerhouse, various thoughts flashed through his mind, but he did not stop for a moment. At this moment, the gray flame on the surface of his body had already collided with the distorted space-time, heaven and earth, and laws of the green flame. The grayish flame and the cyan flame were two completely different existences. The changes in the mysterious power derived from the two were also completely different aspects. At this moment, the two collided, but it was simply like the contact of water and hot oil, instantly producing an extremely intense reaction. At this moment, an endless impact erupted the moment the two collided. Amidst the impact, even more mysterious and wonderful changes appeared. It seemed as if space-time was being formed, and it also seemed as if endless destruction was being born. It also seemed as if all sorts of strange things and phenomena were being displayed. The complexity was simply indescribable. Chapter 21:44. The two types of flames kept colliding and clashing. The surrounding space-time, heaven and earth, laws, and everything else were divided, destroyed, and annihilated in the process. In the end, they turned into resources for the two of them to increase their strength, allowing them to grow continuously. Phoenix update, fast please search. This growth made the conflict between the two of them even more intense, which in turn intensified the changes, forming a vicious cycle between the two. The mysterious power that Luo Fan grasped was naturally much weaker than the mysterious power that the platform grasped. However, his wisdom and willpower were countless times stronger than the platform. Under such circumstances, although the gray flames he controlled could not compare to the green flames that were born on the platform in terms of quantity and intensity, the gray flames that he controlled could not compare to the green flames that were born on the platform. However, the result of the collision between the two was equal. Every time the cyan flame used its powerful quantity to crush the gray flame, causing the gray flame to collapse and scatter, Luo Fan's powerful will would be instilled into it, directly manipulating the broken gray flame to begin to condense again. In the process, it would even devour the scattered heaven and earth, power, and rules of the world that the cyan flame had scattered, strengthening the gray flame. In contrast, under Luo Fan's control, the gray flame was extremely agile. It penetrated through the cracks of the cyan flame with unimaginable finesse and entered the depths of the cyan flame. It directly targeted the core of the cyan flame and began to disintegrate the cyan flame from the inside out. Every time the cyan flame collided with the gray flame, it would suffer more damage than the gray flame. In this way, the conflict between the two had naturally turned white-hot. The outcome of the battle between Luo Fan and the platform was not to shatter the power of the platform, but to become the master of the platform, to become the guardian that the platform had no choice but to recognize. Therefore, at this moment, when his flames resisted the green flames, his body began to approach the platform step by step. It looked like he was walking towards the center of a blazing bonfire with a torch in his hand. Faced with such a situation, the platform did not have any good way to deal with it. It could only continuously condense the green flames in front of Luo Fan in an attempt to block his path forward and prevent him from advancing. Although this method was somewhat effective against the gray flames, it was only somewhat effective. In the end, it still could not truly stop Luo Fan. It could only slightly slow him down. At this moment, a mysterious power began to surge on the platform. Gradually, a figure condensed on the platform. This figure was an old man. He floated above the platform, just below the green flames. He raised his hands up high, and the power around him surged. Waves of mysterious thoughts flowed continuously from his body to his hands and into the green flames above him. Following this change, the green flames seemed to become even more agile. The mark left behind by the Guardian back then? Looking at this scene, this thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind. For the cultivators of this world, If they wanted to refine this platform and become its guardian, there was only one way, and that was to leave their mark in the depths of the platform and let the platform accept their mark. Therefore, it could be imagined that there must have been one mark after another on any platform since ancient times. For something at the level of a platform, as long as something had existed before, it could obviously reconstruct it. Therefore, even if the guardian had disappeared and the platform had become ownerless again in the process, which meant that there was no longer any mark left, it could still condense any mark that had existed in the past when it needed to. For ordinary creatures, a mark was naturally just a characteristic without any vitality. It could not produce any ability or display any power at all. However, for existences at Luo Fan's level, it was a simple matter to bestow a mark with great power. If even Luo Fan could do this, then it would obviously be even easier for the more mysterious and profound platform to do this. And this was what the platform was doing. Countless thoughts flashed through Luo Fan's mind. In an instant, he had already understood the cause and effect and the principles behind it. It seems that the guardian has already fallen. His heart moved slightly, and after various thoughts flashed through his mind, he already made a judgment. After making this judgment, he let out a sigh of relief. The mark in front of him had already turned into the image of the guardian, but its intelligence was still rather stiff, and it did not show intelligence comparable to its realm at all. This situation clearly meant that the mark was still just a mark. Even with such a change, it still could not change its essence. This situation meant that the guardian did not pour his will into the mark when it was formed. As the guardian, if he really sensed that the guardian platform needed his mark and his will, he would definitely not refuse. Shuxi's performance was the best proof. Under such circumstances, the reason for the current situation was extremely obvious. The reason why Luo Fan was relieved was even more simple. This was because the mark had been condensed by the platform again, which also meant that the guardian had become the owner of the platform again. If the guardian was still alive, then he would naturally be able to return to the platform and control it again. At that time, if Luo Fan wanted to occupy the platform again, he would have to suppress it like how he did to Shuxi back then. If the guardian was only at Shuxi's level, he naturally did not care. However, it was clear that the guardian's ability was on par with his, and it could even use this mysterious power to derive this kind of flame ability. How could Shuxi compare? He was confident that he could seize the platform from someone at Shuxi's level, but he was absolutely not confident that he could escape unscathed from the owner of the mark. With a thought, he activated his mysterious power without any hesitation and poured it into the gray flames. The flames suddenly trembled, and like a spark that had been doused with kerosene, it suddenly exploded and began to expand. As it swelled, the flame began to undergo various subtle changes. It was as though it had condensed into numerous long swords that pierced through the surrounding green-colored flame. Like a butcher dismembering an ox, it began to continuously cut the surrounding green-colored flame. During this process, the green-colored flame was continuously cut apart, gradually revealing an increasingly clear and long path that led directly to the source of the flame, which was also that platform. Through the confrontation with the green flames on the platform, he had gained more understanding of the characteristics of the flames, so he was able to control the flames to produce more changes. The mark on the platform was only a mark, after all. Although it strengthened the changes of the green flames after it appeared, it was ultimately limited. Naturally, it was impossible for him to level up in battle like Luo Fan. In the face of Luo Fan's transformation of flames that had condensed into countless sharp swords, he could only futilely use his cyan flames to crush them. In this way, Luo Fan's speed did not decrease, but increased instead. He actually gradually recovered to his original speed and walked towards the platform step by step. The changes here finally attracted the attention of the surrounding Guardian platforms. After all, there was a subtle connection between the Guardian platforms. A certain platform suddenly began to activate its potential to fight against some existence. No matter how one looked at it, it seemed like a terrifying disaster had occurred in that region. In such a situation, how could the Guardians of the other regions not be concerned? Who knew if this disaster would spread to the region they were guarding? When they noticed this, cries of alarm came from the various Guardian platforms. Among them, the 7 million or so Guardians who had survived were even more shocked, and all of them began to panic. What should we do? His revenge is coming. This was the panic in the hearts of these Guardians. Along with this panic, those Guardians began to collude with each other, trying to get good advice from other Guardians. However, the thoughts in the hearts of many Guardians were similar to them at this time. They were all filled with panic, and each of them seemed to be at a loss as to what to do. With this change, this panic began to gradually spread. In the end, those Guardians who weren't part of the 7 million Guardians who had attacked Luo Fan's Guardian region began to panic. And just as everyone was panicking, a different voice suddenly came out. This is a good chance. He actually left his Guardian region. This is a good chance for us to take revenge. This voice instantly made many Guardians speechless. Then, an inexplicable excitement emerged in the hearts of many Guardians. That's right. He has now left his Guardian region. Without his Guardian platform, his strength has been weakened countless times. In this state, he is simply a fish on the chopping board to us. What's there to be afraid of? This is really our best chance. Damn it. I was almost deceived by the panic in my heart. In this state, he is simply courting death. The voices of the Guardians reverberated continuously, and the confidence between each other constantly increased through this exchange. Then, the Guardians began to collude with each other and began to discuss how to deal with Luo Fan, who had already left their territory. However, among the 7 million Guardians, only a small number of them, which was equivalent to about 10% of the Guardians, participated in it. Although the other Guardians knew that this was an excellent opportunity. After all, the previous two experiences had dispelled their sharpness in their hearts. The fear of Luo Fan had already been deeply engraved in their hearts. At this time, although they kept saying that this was a good opportunity and that they should take revenge now, when they really colluded with Luo Fan, they directly shut their mouths and completely retreated. What's wrong with you guys? You were so awe-inspiring just now. Why are you cowering now? Some Guardians who weren't part of the 7 million Guardians angrily rebuked these retreating Guardians. It's not that we're cowering, but we're powerless. Now, the injuries we suffered before have not been alleviated, let alone recovered. Even if we want to participate, we don't have the ability to do so at all. A Guardian sighed and said helplessly. What he said was not entirely a lie. How long had it been since their mysterious power was cut off by Luo Fan? In such a short period of time, the backlash they suffered from the platform was still reverberating in their bodies. Perhaps their bodies would collapse if they relaxed a little. The severity of their injuries could be seen at a glance. However, even so, there were still some untruths in their words. After all, they were powerful Guardians who had controlled the Guardian platform for hundreds of millions of years. Their ability to manipulate and influence the platform had reached an unimaginable depth. Under such influence, if they really wanted to give it their all, even if they were seriously injured, even if the backlash of the Guardian platform was still reverberating in their bodies, they could still manipulate the Guardian platform to release the mysterious power to participate in their plan this time. After all, the Guardian platform did not expel them and still made them Guardians. This already showed that the Guardian platform still recognized their status. The many Guardians naturally understood what they meant and began to feel disdainful. In that case, don't covet the benefits we get later. A Guardian said faintly. Luo Fan had huge benefits. This was already a public knowledge to these Guardians. After all, Luo Fan's performance was too exaggerated. How long had he been the Guardian platform? Not even 1,000,000 years, right? This amount of time was less than 1/1000th of any of them. And in less than 1/1000th of such a time, Luo Fan had already easily crossed countless bottlenecks and rushed to a height that they could not understand. His understanding of the mysterious power also surpassed all of them. If such a Luo Fan said that he did not have any secrets, it would simply be an insult to all of their intelligence. It was precisely because they felt that Luo Fan was hiding some extremely incredible secret that these guardians were so active in intervening in this plan to deal with Luo Fan. Otherwise, only a few of them had suffered losses because of Luo Fan. How could they be so active in fighting against Luo Fan? Of course, at this moment, the retreating guardians expressed that they were not interested in the benefits of Luo Fan, but they showed the word cowardice incisively and vividly. This kind of performance naturally made the other guardians even more disdainful, and they even couldn't be bothered to communicate with them anymore. The retreating guardians were naturally quite clear about the thoughts of those guardians. Although they felt humiliated in their hearts, they were even more delighted at the misfortune of others. You guys think that we are weak because we suffered such a big loss before. Little do you know that it is because we suffered such a big loss that we know how strong he is. You guys only have millions of people now, and you want to deal with him? This was what most of these guardians thought. Of course, there was also a small portion of people who had different thoughts. Although it's extremely likely that you guys will succeed, if you fail, the result is not something that we can bear. This was the thought of the protector, whose fear of Luo Fan had already been deeply engraved in his heart and could no longer be erased. Regarding the thoughts of many of these already cowardly guardians, those who were making plans didn't care. At this time, their hearts were already filled with the benefits that they would obtain next. Even at this time, the guardians had already begun to argue about how to divide the secret after obtaining it. Of course, in the end, they were not ordinary mortals. In the end, they were all cultivators with enough wisdom. These guardians were only slightly involved in this aspect. The real focus of their research was on how to deal with Luo Fan. Although these guardians had great confidence in the current Luo Fan, they were still cautious after all. At this time, they repeatedly studied all the abilities that Luo Fan had displayed in the battle with the 7 million guardians, constantly extracted the data of Luo Fan's abilities, and then study them one by one through the wisdom of the guardians. Almost all the guardians were powerhouses who had entered the tribulation, and each of them was extremely intelligent. In just a short span of a few breaths, they had already studied hundreds of thousands of plans, and had even clearly considered almost every kind of change. All the guardians finally determined that such research was enough to deal with all the changes, and was enough to completely block all of Luo Fan's resistance. Chapter 2145. At this time, these mysterious forces were no longer doing their own thing and moving side by side with each other. Instead, they began to communicate with each other. The power had an extremely close communication, complementing each other, and vaguely forming a complete whole. This was a response they made after studying the previous failure of the more than 7 million mysterious forces. Phoenix / Phoenix / quick update please search. If the previous 7 million mysterious forces were to be added up as a whole, their power would be more than 10,000 times stronger than the mysterious force that Luo Fan possessed. The most fundamental reason why so many mysterious forces were defeated so easily when facing Luo Fan was that the many mysterious forces were doing their own thing. They were like a plate of loose sand, being defeated by the opponent one by one. As for the other things, like their understanding of the mysterious forces was inferior to the opponent's, and the opponent had walked to the peak of the Guardian's path, all of this was obviously secondary to them. With such a thought, it was easy to imagine the choice they would make at this time. Almost all of these Guardians were Tribulation Realm powerhouses. For people like them, their understanding of the existence of formations and their experience of joint attacks was naturally beyond imagination. At this time, since they had already recognized that they had to combine their powers to better deal with the opponent, the degree of exquisiteness of their combination of many mysterious forces at this time could be imagined. At this moment, the mysterious forces were constantly trembling, resonating with any other mysterious forces. During this resonance, the mysterious forces were undergoing subtle adjustments, constantly changing the complete whole that they had combined into, causing the power of the whole to constantly increase and sublimate in the process. In the end, It faintly made the hole formed by these mysterious forces reach a level of power that was hundreds of times stronger than the original various mysterious forces. After discovering this change, the tens of millions of Guardians were inexplicably excited. They were already full of endless confidence in whether they could defeat Luo Fan. Originally, the combined might of the tens of millions of mysterious forces had already reached an unimaginable level. Now it was increased by tens of thousands of times on this basis. The only opponent that this power could not defeat was probably a true sage. With this confidence, these mysterious forces formed an encirclement and slowly pounced towards the area where Luo Fan was. During this process, they constantly rejected the mysterious power that originally existed in this area, causing the mysterious power to shrink continuously towards the place where the Guardian platform was located, which was also where Luo Fan was at this moment. As it shrank, the Guardian platform began to tremble slightly. The figure on the platform had an extremely furious expression on his face. This figure was a brand formed by the Guardian platform. Although it belonged to one of the Guardians in front of the Guardian platform, if the Guardian still existed, the brand would instantly fuse with the Guardian, directly drawing the Guardian's will over and controlling the brand. However, it was still an imprint formed by the platform. Fundamentally speaking, it still belonged to the platform. Therefore, this imprint could naturally express the platform's instinctive emotional response. In other words, it showed the platform's reaction to this encounter in a way that living beings could understand. It was obvious that the platform was extremely furious at this situation. Luo Fan's reaction was extremely sharp, and he instantly discovered the strangeness of this figure's reaction. After all, an existence at his level could not be any clearer about whether or not the anger was directed at him. If it was really directed at him, he would be able to sense it even if it was billions of light years away, even if it was countless worlds and endless space-time. However, it was obvious that he did not sense the appearance of this rage. Therefore, there was only one possibility, and that was that this anger was not directed at him. After understanding this, his heart trembled. He extracted a trace of his mysterious power and began to contact the Guardian platform in another area. Then, he used the Guardian platform's power to sweep the entire area and search for abnormalities in this area. This method was the most basic ability of the master of the Guardian platform. Even if Luo Fan was extremely far away from the Guardian platform, and even if the mysterious power he could separate was only a very small portion, it still didn't reduce this ability in the slightest. Following that, one scene after another entered his mind, causing his expression to suddenly turn ugly. They're actually besieging me again. This thought flashed through his mind, and his gaze turned cold. He thought that there was no enmity between him and the Guardians. He had attacked the Guardians previously because they had invaded the area he was guarding. In fact, when he attacked, he had only targeted the mysterious power that they had released and not the Guardians themselves. However, he did not expect that the Guardians would ignore his tolerance and kindness again and again. They had gathered a large force to deal with him again and again. Since you're acting like this, don't blame me. With a thought, the gray flame on his body suddenly erupted, and it was instantly dozens of times stronger than before. With the sudden eruption of the flames, the cyan flames began to retreat bit by bit, revealing a path that led directly to the Guardian platform. This kind of instantaneous eruption of power was something that almost all martial artists in the secular world possessed, let alone in existence at Luo Fan's level. Although this kind of eruption was powerful and could easily suppress an opponent that was originally in a stalemate, at the same time, this kind of eruption also came with a huge price. For example, after the mysterious power completely erupted, there would be a period of time when the mysterious power will be weakened to a 10th or even a 100th of its original level. This kind of weakening would naturally not matter under normal circumstances, but at this moment, if he could not deal with this platform and become the guardian of this platform, then the one in danger would obviously be him. It was precisely because this kind of eruption had such a side effect that Luo Fan did not intend to use this method previously. However, it was clear that the current dire situation no longer allowed him to fight steadily and surely. After all, if he delayed any longer, the mysterious power of the many guardians might have already pressed down on this platform and directly taken effect on him. The moment the heavy green flame made way for the path, Luo Fan's figure directly penetrated through space and time. He appeared in front of the guardian platform almost without the need for a time interval. He lifted his foot and stomped on the guardian platform. At this time, the guardian platform began to buzz and tremble. An incomparably strong repulsive force was generated from it, repelling Luo Fan, or rather, repelling the mysterious power that he controlled in his body that completely belonged to him. Naturally, Luo Fan had expected this kind of repulsive force. After all, he had already caused the guardian platform to repel him when he stepped into this area. Now that he had arrived in front of the guardian platform and was about to step on it, would the repulsive force weaken instead? At this moment, he roared and the mysterious power in his body erupted once again. The power that erupted was slightly weaker than before, but it was still far beyond his normal limits. As this power erupted, the repulsive force that was produced on the platform that was completely aimed at him was instantly slashed apart. A passage appeared directly under his feet. As this passage appeared, Luo Fan suddenly exerted force with his right foot and finally stepped on the platform in an instant. At this moment, the repulsive force disappeared. The figure that was branded on the platform, the green flame, and all the changes caused by the green flame all disappeared in an instant. At this moment, only Luo Fan and the gray flame that he had condensed were left on the entire platform. In addition, the space-time, heaven and earth, laws, energy, and matter around the platform all began to rapidly recover. In just a few breaths of time, it had completely returned to normal. It no longer looked like it had gone through such a tragic change and suffered such incredible damage. Just like how the Guardian could condense its own mysterious power, when the existence with the mysterious power truly stepped on the Guardian platform, the repulsive force of the Guardian platform would disappear. This was not an incomprehensible change. In fact, it could be regarded as the Guardian platform testing all cultivators who wanted to become a Guardian. Once a cultivator was unable to step onto the Guardian platform due to the repulsive force, it naturally meant that they were not qualified to become the owner of the platform and the Guardian of this area. Once a cultivator could withstand the repulsive force of the Guardian platform and directly stand on the platform, it clearly meant that everything on the platform no longer affected the Guardian. This meant that this cultivator was qualified to become the Guardian of this platform. The moment he stood on the platform and felt the repulsive force suddenly disappear, Luo Fan secretly heaved a sigh of relief. At the very least, the situation was as he had expected. Sure enough, the moment he stepped on the platform accepted his existence from the fact that he could easily condense his own mysterious power on the Guardian platform. He had already guessed this situation. After all, even if one condensed their own mystical energy on the Guardian platform, they would not be rejected by the platform. They would still be the master of the platform. It could be seen that the Guardian platform's rejection of different mystical energy was not absolute. Under certain circumstances, this repulsive force would completely disappear, and it might even turn into a welcoming force. And it was highly likely that this would happen the moment he stepped onto the platform. All kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind, but Luo Fan directly suppressed them and quickly invaded the depths of the Guardian platform with his perception. Now that the tens of millions of mysterious powers around him had formed a formation and were constantly pressuring him, the most important thing was obviously to take control of the Guardian platform. Only then could he obtain the power to resist the numerous mysterious powers. Now that the Guardian platform had accepted Luo Fan, it naturally could not set up any more obstacles on it. Therefore, very easily, Luo Fan had already invaded the deepest part of the Guardian platform and directly left his imprint on it. It was not that he did not want to completely refine the Guardian platform, but it required too much time and energy to refine the Guardian platform. At this time, he did not have so much time and energy to complete this project. However, even if he only left this imprint in the deepest part of the Guardian platform, his control over the Guardian platform had already surpassed almost 99% of the Guardians, and this kind of control also meant that the power that he could activate and draw out from this platform would far surpass that of almost 99% of the Guardians. At this moment, an indescribable resonance was formed between the Guardian platform and Luo Fan. As this resonance occurred, waves of information rolled towards him from the Guardian platform. At this moment, he instantly felt the imprint left behind in the depths of the Guardian platform that belonged to the many previous Guardians. Just like how he could still find Shu Ci's imprint on the Guardian platform after he had seized it, now that he had become the owner of this Guardian platform, he could still find the imprint that belonged to the previous Guardians. However, almost all of these marks had already lost their owners, leaving behind only a few faint illusory traces among the many imprints. Luo Fan instantly found the one that had been condensed by this Guardian platform before. It was the imprint left behind by the Guardian who had developed the mysterious power to the point of condensing the flame magical ability. At this moment, his heart moved, and his perception directly wrapped around the imprint. He began to absorb all the information within and analyze all the mysteries within. With Luo Fan's ability, as long as there was a trace, he could return to the origin and directly analyze the most fundamental mysteries and the deepest truths hidden within. As for this mark, it was just ordinary. Even if he hadn't seen the various things that were triggered by the Guardian platform before, as long as he noticed this imprint, he would definitely be able to analyze all the mysteries within it. Moreover, he had already seen it before. In just a short span of a few dozen breaths, Luo Fan had already found what he was looking for from the imprint marks. So that's how it is. It's indeed mysterious. At this moment, Luo Fan murmured and slowly opened his eyes. As he opened his eyes, the gray flame that condensed above his head began to expand continuously. In the blink of an eye, it had already expanded to 100 times its original size. Then, the gray flame began to sink toward the platform. In the blink of an eye, it had completely sunk into the platform and began to burn from the inside out. Gradually, it leaked out from the cracks of the platform, gradually turning the platform into a huge gray flame. It looked like it was completely condensed from flames. At this moment, in the deepest part of the platform, the countless mysterious power that belonged to the platform's core was also entangled by this flame. It began to burn continuously, and the mysterious power within it began to be replaced by this flame bit by bit. At this moment, the mysterious power within began to struggle, trying its best to resist the burning of this flame and resist the replacement of the mysterious power by this flame. Unfortunately, this flame was sublimated from the mysterious power, and its quality itself was a notch higher than the mysterious power. With the higher quality crushing the lower quality, how could that mysterious power have the ability to resist? In the end, it could only retreat bit by bit under the burning of the flame, and it was replaced by a speed that was tens of thousands of times faster than normal. At this moment, the entire area began to tremble slightly. Waves of mysterious power erupted everywhere in this area. Amidst rumbling sounds, they destroyed areas that were as vast as the heavens and earth, causing the space-time, laws, energy, and matter in these areas to fall into a state of chaos. There was almost no pattern to this kind of eruption, and all the changes were different. No two were exactly the same. As a whole, it seemed like the ruler of this area was no longer able to restrain the power of the entire area, causing the power within this area to fall into chaos. This change was quickly discovered by the owners of the tens of millions of mysterious powers in the surroundings. Oh no, there's a change. The Guardians turned pale with fright. The situation in front of them was clearly caused by a problem with the Guardian platform. And the one who was fighting against the Guardian platform was obviously their target this time, Luo Fan. If there was a problem with the Guardian platform, didn't that mean that the state of the battle between Luo Fan and the Guardian platform had changed? And what did this change mean? Did it mean that Luo Fan had defeated the Guardian platform and obtained its power, or did it mean that Luo Fan had failed? Was he completely crushed by the Guardian platform's eruption? Either of these two situations was clearly not a good thing for the Guardians. After all, if Luo Fan succeeded in subduing the Guardian platform and obtained its power, his resistance against them would obviously increase. If they wanted to subdue him, they would have to put in more effort, and they might even fail in the end. This was naturally a bad thing. Chapter 2146. With this understanding, they began to accelerate at the same time and push their mysterious powers in an even more ferocious manner. In other words, the array formed by their many mysterious powers. As they sped up, the commotion they caused grew increasingly louder. Because they had focused all their attention on increasing their speed, their suppression of the mysterious power within their bodies was no longer perfect. Wisps of power leaked out, directly collapsing the surrounding space-time, collapsing the laws of the surroundings. This change made the already astonishing chaos in this area even more chaotic at this time. It seemed as if the doomsday scene in the area where Luo Fan was the first to control the Guardian platform was going to be replayed, whether it was the changes caused by Luo Fan stirring up the platform or the changes caused by these mysterious powers. At the end of the day, it was all because of the mysterious powers. Under such circumstances, for the many living beings in this area, apart from some cultivators who could barely touch the mysterious powers, almost all the other cultivators could not sense the existence of the mysterious powers, let alone understand the function of the mysterious powers. In the eyes of such living beings, the chaos in this area and the power that killed living beings came from the natural evolution of heaven and earth. With this understanding, furious roars came from everywhere in this area and rebuked the heavens. All sorts of tragic cries and shrill screams were directed at the heaven and earth. In other words, they were directed at the existence that controlled the fate of the heaven and earth according to their understanding. None of the Guardians cared about such a change at all, and none of them would have the thought of changing their methods just because of their reprimanding and cursing. They continued to push the array formed by tens of millions of mysterious powers at an extremely fast speed, constantly approaching the center of this area and the Guardian platform. Just as they were worried and vigilant, some kind of gray flame suddenly appeared out of thin air in this area. After the gray flame appeared, it instantly began to devour everything around it to strengthen itself. As it devoured, each flame began to grow almost endlessly. The range of its influence also continued to expand. In the end, they gradually linked up and turned into a boundless sea of fire that gradually spread towards the entire area. It was as if the entire space-time and the entire world in this entire area would be wrapped in this sea of fire. The dusky flame was profound, and just sensing its existence caused the faces of the protectors to drastically change. Almost all of the Guardians had been in the position of Guardians for hundreds of millions of years. Needless to say, they were extremely knowledgeable. As soon as they discovered the gray flame, many of them already knew what kind of flame it was. After they found out what kind of flame it was, they also clearly understood how terrifying and powerful their opponent, the cultivator who they thought was a fish on the chopping block, was. We have to act quickly. If we delay any longer, we will be the ones to die. At this moment, furious roars came from the mouths of many Guardians. Through the connection between the mysterious powers, the roars reached the ears of the tens of millions of Guardians, shaking their hearts. How is this possible? Are you guys crazy? We clearly have the upper hand now. A Guardian reprimanded with a frown. After all, he didn't know what the flame represented at all. In his eyes at this time, Luo Fan was already retreating step by step. Obviously, the only result waiting for him was failure. However, in such a situation, one of their companions actually said that they were going to fail if they didn't hurry up. How could they understand that? But it was obvious that even if they couldn't understand and felt that the Guardians were already crazy, they still sped up in the end. But in the end, they still sped up. They worked hard to urge the mysterious power to advance at an even faster speed towards the Guardian platform, towards Luo Fan. The reason for this was very simple, because speeding up didn't have much of an impact on them. Even if it did, it would be a good impact. Under such circumstances, even if they didn't know why the Guardians said that, they would naturally choose to speed up just in case. Anyway, even if they failed, there wouldn't be much loss at this moment at the Central Guardian platform, which was also where Luo Fan was. The gray flames had already completely covered the platform. The entire platform, no matter from which angle, was already a huge bonfire. At the same time, countless flames gradually disappeared amid the evaporation. No one knew where they went, causing the flames on the platform to unknowingly form a terrible dynamic balance. Flames were constantly generated on the platform, constantly surging in all directions. However, the flame platform seemed to be the same as before. It didn't become denser because of the generation of flames, nor did it thin because of the spread of flames in such a dynamic balance. Luo Fan's expression became calm. At this moment, his eyes seemed to reflect a boundless gray sea of flames. This was the current scene of the entire area guarded by the Guardian platform. This gray flame was now sent over through the connection between the platform itself and everything in this area. And because of the characteristics of this gray flame, even if only a little of this flame was sent over, it would be enough for it to grow into an incredible behemoth. It was precisely because of this that the entire area was so vast and was covered by the endless sea of flames at this moment. In this endless sea of flames, there was a power that was rapidly shrinking and constantly expelling flames. It was rapidly condensing towards where Luo Fan was at this moment. This power was naturally the entire body of the mysterious power that the tens of millions of Guardians were mobilizing. Because the sea of flames was both inside and outside, if the mysterious power wanted to advance in it now, it could only start by eliminating the flames in front of it first. It was precisely because of this that the mysterious power would advance in this way. And at this moment, in the hearts of the tens of millions of Guardians, all of them felt greater and greater pressure. Most of the Guardians who originally didn't understand the words of the few Guardians also understood their worries at this moment and understood why they asked them to speed up as soon as possible. This gray flame was currently unable to break through the combination of tens of millions of mysterious powers, and it couldn't completely ignite and eliminate the mysterious power. However, just by looking at the impact and the pressure that these flames brought to them during the burning process, they could tell that the owner of these flames was an extremely powerful existence. Even if they had many people here, they might not be able to defeat that person. How did this person do it? Even if he is extremely powerful, it's impossible for him to refine this Guardian platform so easily. Some Guardians cried out indignantly in their hearts. The flames were incomparably terrifying, but that was only secondary. After all, no matter how terrifying they were, they could only burn on the outside. They couldn't enter the formation at all, let alone threaten their own bodies. To them, the more important thing was that if these flames wanted to appear in various locations in this area and eventually form a state where a single spark could start a prairie fire, they had to borrow the power of the Guardian platform. They had to borrow the connection between this Guardian platform and all the space-time in this entire area. Only with this kind of help would the flames be able to spread across the entire region and completely envelop the entire region. In other words, being able to create such a terrifying sea of flames at this time meant that their opponent in front of them had already refined to a depth that even exceeded the depth of the Guardian platform they were guarding in such a short period of time. This made the many Guardians, who had been the Guardians for hundreds of millions of years, want to deepen their refining of the Guardian platform at every moment. How could they endure this? Of course, it was also because of this discovery that made them look simpler on the surface. But in their hearts, they had an even more urgent hope of subduing Luo Fan. At this moment, there seemed to be an inexplicable flame in their hearts, strongly urging them to increase their strength and speed up their charge. They wanted to get close to Luo Fan as soon as possible, subdue this cultivator who was constantly revealing his uniqueness and seize all of his secrets. It was precisely because of this that at this moment, all of them felt indignant and expressed their fear of Luo Fan, but none of them retreated. Instead, everyone activated their own mysterious powers even more forcefully. They even activated the protective platforms they controlled, sending more and more mysterious powers across space and time to fuse with the array, strengthening the power of the array and speeding up the advancement of the array. As a result, the speed at which the formation advanced became faster and faster. The goal that originally needed dozens of days to complete was achieved by them in just a few days. In the end, in a boundless sea of flames, the mysterious power had already begun to form a circle less than dozens of light years away from the platform, completely sealing off all of Luo Fan's escape routes from all directions. It even sealed off the boundless gray flame's path of retreat. Looking at the formation formed by the mysterious power that was so dense that it had condensed into a substance, and the boundless flame was still emitting endless mysterious light, faintly suppressing the gray flame's light, Luo Fan revealed a faint sneer on his face. Because he had absorbed the previous Guardian's understanding and knowledge of the mysterious power, the current Luo Fan's control of the mysterious power had already reached an unimaginable height. And it was precisely because of this improvement that he had completed 30% of the refinement of the Guardian platform with the help of these flames. This kind of refinement was not the kind of refinement that only left one's own mark in the depths of the platform. Instead, it was the kind of refinement that used one's own power to form the platform's core power, as if it was one's own treasure. Although this degree of refinement was only 30%, it was enough to form an absolute suppression for the many Guardians. With such a suppression, in the face of the Guardian's mysterious power, Luo Fan was not worried at all. At a glance, the formation that was so perfect and tight that it couldn't be improved was full of mistakes in his eyes. Even though the formation was several times more exquisite and perfect than the changes of the flames that he had condensed on the platform earlier, at that moment, he just said indifferently, "Why do you want to be enemies with me? I don't know when I have offended you." Hearing his words, the many Guardians suddenly burst into laughter. This laughter was directly transmitted into the boundless sea of fire through their respective mysterious power, causing the sea of fire to reverberate in this laughter, making the atmosphere incomparably strange, just like in hell. How did you cultivate to this step? Could it be that only hatred is the source of the attack? A Guardian said indifferently. As he spoke, he naturally revealed a posture of looking down on Luo Fan, like an old man who controlled the truth and was teaching a child who had just left the infancy stage. When the others heard this, they also laughed. Their attitude of looking down on Yi Shiwen was as obvious as this Guardian. Hearing their answer, Luo Fan sighed. "So that's how it is. It seems that you have taken a fancy to some secret of mine. In this case, I will no longer have any guilt in attacking." What kind of existence was Luo Fan? His high wisdom had long reached a level that ordinary cultivators could not imagine. Looking at the movements of these cultivators and listening to their words, he naturally understood why they attacked him. When the Guardians heard Luo Fan's words, they all sneered. Luo Fan's previous performance had already told them that he could no longer do anything to their power combination. After all, if they had a way, how could they have pushed their mysterious power here, to the surroundings of this platform, and face him directly? Under such a background, in their opinion, Luo Fan's current response was obviously just a bluff. In this case, they naturally scoffed at Luo Fan's words. Luo Fan obviously had no intention of tangling with them anymore. Previously, he let these mysterious forces advance here. In addition to asking them personally and seeing them personally, more importantly, he was preparing some kind of attack that could resist them. At this moment, after a period of preparation, his attack was finally ready. As he shouted, the endless gray flames in the surroundings exploded in an instant. Endless flames began to frantically gather towards the mysterious power from all directions. In the blink of an eye, it had already gathered into an overwhelming sky curtain, encircling the mysterious power, causing the connection between the mysterious power and its source to rapidly weaken. To deal with these mysterious powers, no matter how crude and flawed they were, the first thing to do was not to attack the mysterious power itself, but to isolate the mysterious power from its source. This was because if the source was not isolated, then no matter how many times the mysterious power was attacked, no matter how thoroughly the mysterious power was destroyed, its source would naturally release endless mysterious power to replenish the damage suffered by the mysterious power. In fact, it would even absorb the previous experience to make up for the flaws that were revealed before. Only by isolating the source could one wholeheartedly deal with these mysterious powers and get rid of them completely. This was also what Luo Fan had always done to deal with these mysterious powers. Previously, in the area that he had completely refined, he had dealt with the mysterious power in the 2 times, and it was the same this time. This gray flame itself was a divine ability that was sublimated from the mysterious power, and its power was much stronger than pure mysterious power. Of course, this was for existences at the level of the Guardians whose understanding of the mysterious power was limited to this time. If some existences had a deeper understanding of this mysterious power and dug out even more incredible power from it, then this comparison would naturally not be absolute. After all, this was a mysterious power. Only the unknown could be called mysterious. Since it was unknown, then it was only natural that it contained some sort of incredible profundity and unimaginable might. Of course, all of this was useless to the Guardians now. At this moment, they felt that their connection with the mysterious power was rapidly weakening, as if this connection was ignited by the flame and gradually turned into fuel for the flame. What's going on? We have clearly strengthened this connection. How can we still be affected by the other party's power? The Guardians turned pale with fright at this moment and shouted loudly. Oh no, the fire is spreading. Suddenly, a Guardian shouted with a horrified expression. Chapter 2147. The gray flames were formed by the sublimation of the mysterious power and had all sorts of mysterious and unfathomable powers. It was almost an instinct for them to find the owner of the mysterious power through the connection between the mysterious power. At this moment, the grayish flames continued to spread towards the protectors, causing them to turn pale with fright. They began to retract their attention and do their best to control their power to stop the flames from spreading over. As they withdrew their consciousness, the many mysterious powers that had entered this area naturally lost control. Their power began to erupt brazenly, and endless impacts were released in all directions. In this area that was surrounded by the formation formed by the many mysterious powers, which was the platform that Luo Fan was on at this moment, all sorts of indescribable changes began to occur in the space-time of this area that was surrounded by the formation formed by the many mysterious powers, which was the platform that Luo Fan was on at this moment. The gray flames that originally covered this area seemed to have suffered some kind of indescribable suppression and actually began to shrink gradually. If I let you guys do whatever you want, you might really cause some trouble for me. At this moment, this thought flashed across Luo Fan's mind. The power that erupted from this formation was a little stronger than he had imagined. This method of directly changing time and space, changing the rules and laws, and even completely separating the world from the world, could be said to be fatal to any Guardian platform. After all, the source of the mysterious power of the Guardian platform itself came from the area that it guarded. And this formation could cut off the connection between the Guardian platform and the area it guarded, making the Guardian platform independent. This naturally caused the platform to lose its source of power. In this way, the help that the platform could provide to Luo Fan was naturally cut off by more than half. In this way, the situation was naturally much worse for Luo Fan. However, that was only the case when the Guardians were in control of the battle formation. At this moment, the power of this formation completely erupted. It seemed to be countless times more terrifying than before, but there were also many flaws that shouldn't have existed in it. Moreover, because it was only the power that was activated by the formation's automatic operation, its targeting was also rather ordinary. The use of the power was extremely crude. In this situation, Even if the power of this formation was quite terrifying, it was not a threat to Luo Fan at all. At this moment, with just a thought, the gray flames that had yet to be completely suppressed began to change slightly. They turned into sharp blades and forcefully cut into the terrifying power released by the formation in a way that was countless times more exquisite than a butcher dismembering an ox. As the sharp blades formed by the flames cut in, the power trembled slightly and clashed with each other. In the end, it exploded brazenly. Waves of terrifying power rushed up and directly rushed into the main body of the formation, which was formed by the tens of millions of mysterious powers. In fact, this collision was not just a simple impact. In the impact of this power, it even directly targeted the weak points between the many intertwined mysterious forces and rushed into the many flaws that were already quite obvious in Luo Fan's eyes. In this way, the effect of the impact was naturally many times more terrifying than usual. During the collision, the entire body formed by the mysterious energy was blasted apart in an incomparably smooth manner, causing the tens of thousands of mysterious energies to suddenly explode. They turned into countless fragments that were thrown into the endless grayish flame around them. They were ignited by the flame and finally turned into a part of this grayish flame, causing the grayish flame to become increasingly vigorous with this change. The connection between the platform and the surrounding space-time was re-established, and the gray flames that Luo Fan had suppressed also became vigorous again. They connected with the boundless sea of flames in the outside world. And in the end, the sea of flames began to churn and quickly gather towards the platform. As they gathered, the isolation effect began to gradually strengthen, and the connection between the platform and the surrounding space-time also began to gradually weaken. As the connection weakened, the resistance of the depths of the platform against the gray flames also began to gradually weaken. It's indeed effective. Looks like it's all thanks to the inspiration they gave me. Otherwise, it would have taken a long time to truly refine it. Sensing that the speed at which the flames refined the platform was rapidly increasing, an indescribable joy appeared on Luo Fan's face. Right now, the way the flames around him combined was surprisingly similar to the way the mysterious powers of the protectors combined. In other words, at this moment, Luo Fan was impressively borrowing the grayish flames to recreate the formation formed by the tens of millions of mysterious forces from before. Thus, he was able to form the effect of completely isolating the protective platform from the area it was guarding. Having lost the replenishment of the surrounding energy, the protective platform itself had become water without a source, a tree without roots. Compared to Luo Fan's unceasing gray flame, its resistance naturally did not have much of an effect. In this way, while the protectors were struggling to resist the gray flames that Luo Fan had sent out, Luo Fan began to refine the protected platform at an unimaginable speed to strengthen his foundation. The power of the gray flames was beyond the imagination of the Guardians, and this kind of attack was something that they had never thought of before. Under such circumstances, their resistance to this kind of attack was naturally unprecedentedly weak. Therefore, at this moment, every protector was in a sorry state. They used mysterious powers that were thousands of times stronger than the gray flames to slightly slow down the spreading speed of the gray flames. In the end, as the gray flames spread, the area they were in started to gradually change. A kind of scorching heat began to gradually envelop the area, and it was getting stronger and wider. Normally, this kind of change would be enough to cause the protectors to descend and directly deal with the source of this disaster. But at this moment, none of the protectors had the time to care about this. The more they resisted the gray flames, the more troublesome they felt and the less confidence they had in their hearts. That was because even though they could use mysterious powers that were thousands of times stronger to slightly slow down the spreading of the gray flames, they could only slow it down. Whether it was to destroy it or resist it, they couldn't do it at all. Under such circumstances, the final outcome was that they had finally used up all their mysterious powers and could no longer obstruct the flames. In the end, The flames would directly break through all obstacles, all defenses, and brazenly climb onto their bodies, climbing onto the protected platform they were in. And there was no need to say what the outcome would be like. It could be said that the current situation could be said to be a life and death crisis for them. Under such circumstances, how could they possibly care about the small increase in the temperature in these areas? However, even if they did not care, it did not mean that the living beings and civilizations in these areas did not care. It must be known that these were only small changes in the eyes of the protectors, but it was enough to affect their living environment and even their cultivation environment. In these areas that were invaded by the heat, the various civilizations keenly sensed that the world seemed to have changed. The various rules that they originally took for granted seemed to have undergone some subtle changes. In terms of cultivation, any subtle changes would ultimately have an earth-shattering impact. At this moment, almost as soon as the heat changed, a large number of cultivation techniques in their civilization lost their effects. In fact, a large number of cultivation techniques even had the opposite effect. Most of the cultivators who practiced these cultivation methods began to go crazy at that time. It must be known that these cultivators were as weak as ants in the eyes of existences at the level of Luo Fan. To them, even the entire cultivation civilization could be instantly erased with a finger. However, from their point of view, all of their achievements, all of their strength, and all of their abilities were obtained after they had spent an endless amount of time and energy and paid an unknown price. Under such circumstances, they could only watch helplessly as their cultivation base disappeared, their strength weakened, and all of their hard work turned into bubbles. How could any cultivator be able to endure it? Going crazy was already considered a relatively normal behavior. As they went crazy, the disturbances gradually began to spread. Many living beings began to fall into an indescribable panic. Along with this change, the protected platform where they were naturally also began to undergo subtle changes. After all of the power in the protected platform came from the various areas where it was located. Under such circumstances, the changes in these areas would naturally feed back to the Guardian platform, causing the platform to change as well. However, because this area was simply too large, even though there were more and more places where there were more and more disturbances, it was still considered nothing compared to the overall area. Therefore, the feedback to the protected platform was naturally not too big and not too obvious. It was precisely because of this that the protectors did not notice the existence of this change, and they were still wholeheartedly trying to resist the flames. This change lasted for several years. At a certain moment, the protectors suddenly felt that they were running out of power. The mysterious power that they could not see the end, no matter how they extracted it, suddenly lost its source. Well, they could vaguely see the end of the power. The tens of millions of protectors were stunned. Although they knew that the mysterious power could not be used by them and could exist forever, they felt that even if they were going to reach the end, it would still take at least trillions of years. However, even if they were to reach the end, they felt that it would take at least trillions of years. How could they reach the end in just a few short years? This must be a joke. When they suddenly discovered this incomparably terrifying fact, they began to thoroughly investigate the changes in the area they were in. This discovery caused them to turn pale with fright, and their panic towards Luo Fan suddenly rose to the peak in an instant. This is his doing. How could he do this? This power has exceeded the limit that a protector should have. Similar or even identical thoughts flashed in the minds of the protectors. At this moment, almost every inch of space-time, every corner of heaven and earth, and every law and law had turned gray, as though they had been assimilated by the gray flames. Everything had become similar to the gray flames. Moreover, in this process, endless heat was constantly being released from these areas, gradually changing the environment of the entire area. It made these areas extremely desolate, and the countless civilizations and creatures that densely filled these areas had been reduced by at least 90%. The entire area finally showed a feeling of desolation for the first time since they took control of it. If such a drastic change had happened tens of billions of years ago, although they would be shocked, they wouldn't lose their composure. But now this terrifying change had clearly happened in just a few years. This was simply subverting their worldview. Back then, those pinnacle powerhouses definitely couldn't do this. At this moment, the protectors were filled with regret and fear. Although they didn't know that all the power protecting the platform came from the various areas around it, they knew that the power protecting the platform would change according to the changes in the surrounding environment. Now that these areas had become so desolate and the environment had changed so much, it was normal for the mysterious power to weaken. And the weakening of the mysterious power meant that the support to resist the obscure flames that spread along the mysterious connection had disappeared, and its disappearance also meant that their doomsday was right in front of them. At this moment, they suddenly felt an incomparably terrifying life force being released from the life force that they had been able to resist to the extreme. With the release of this vitality, the flames seemed to have suddenly obtained infinite power and began to push everything away, spreading towards them at a speed that was more than 100 times faster than before. What's going on? Why is it suddenly so much faster? At this moment, the protectors were no longer just thinking about this in their minds. They began to scream one by one, and their eyes were filled with panic. Originally, it would take at least a few years for them to cross this distance, but in just a few days, those flames had already crossed this distance. In the end, under their despairing gazes, the gray flames directly entangled the protectors' minds, spread out from their minds, and directly wrapped around their bodies, turning the tens of millions of protectors into tens of millions of gray flaming people. During this process, the protectors had activated almost all of their abilities, methods, and divine abilities. They had even used up all of their resources to activate the platform to release a mysterious power to protect themselves and resist the gray flames. However, the final result was that the speed at which they were turned into flaming people was slightly slowed down by the time calculated in seconds. In the end, finally, some protectors could not take it anymore and began to loudly beg for mercy. "Spare me. Spare me. I'm willing to pay any price, as long as you spare my life." Their shouts were directly transmitted at this moment, and they pounced towards the area they were guarding. At this moment, they obviously did not have enough mental strength to control these voices to directly transmit to the target without leaking the slightest. Such voices naturally affected the gray flames, and thus were transmitted back, allowing Luo Fan to directly hear these voices begging for mercy. However, at this moment, he did not care about these voices at all. At this moment, he was hovering above the Guardian platform. The gray flames on his body expanded and contracted in sync with the gray flames that appeared on the platform below. It was as if the two of them were one. That's right, he had now completely refined this protection platform. It was just like when he refined the protection platform that originally belonged to Shu Si. In total, it only took a total of nearly 10 years. Even compared to refining Shu Si's platform, it was countless times faster. It was precisely because he had completely refined the platform that the gray flames from before suddenly obtained such a powerful vitality. It was also why they could instantly break through the resistance of the Guardians and directly pounce on the Guardians, directly igniting everything they had. And it was also when he ignited everything that they had that he felt that his gray power was constantly replacing the imprints they had left on the Guardian platforms. In other words, he was gradually becoming the owner of those protection platforms. Under such circumstances, even if those protectors had no enmity with him, he absolutely could not let them go, let alone now that he had a sufficient excuse to attack them. As he ignored the protectors' pleas for mercy, the protectors' wails became more and more mournful. In the end, the various wails and pleas for mercy gradually turned into resentful curses. Those curses were extremely unpleasant, and it made people wonder if they were actually spoken by intelligent beings. Chapter 2148. Luo Fan naturally did not care about all of this. The best experience of reading a novel is here. At this time, he just attached his perception to the flame and directly transmitted it to the place where the tens of millions of Guardian platforms were located through the connection between the flames. He constantly penetrated into the depths of the Guardian platforms and constantly devoured and replaced the original imprints on the Guardian platforms. In this process, the Guardians were ignited one by one. Even if they could finally cut off the connection between themselves and the Guardian platforms, they could not cut off the gray flame from burning their bodies. In the end, they turned into ashes in the burning and finally disappeared without a trace. In just a few dozen breaths, Luo Fan had already destroyed tens of millions of Guardians who were originally considered high and mighty in this world. This method was so terrifying and shocking that the Guardians who were watching this battle were all dumbfounded. They only felt that their worldview had been subverted. When did the almost omnipotent Guardians become so weak? Tens of millions of them were actually killed by some existence. And among the Guardians who were involved in this battle, those who belonged to the 7 million Guardians before but did not join in were all shocked, afraid, and glad. If they had not been a little more cautious before, they would have been the ones who were destroyed now. Every time they thought of this, they could not help but shiver, as if the world around them had turned gray. What a terrifying expert! Why did such an incredible existence appear in this world? This was the thought in the hearts of the Guardians, or rather, it was their unwillingness, their doubts. After all, these Guardians had always stood at the top of the food chain. Even if the other Guardians joined forces, they could at most suppress a Guardian around the platform. Since ancient times, no one had ever heard of a Guardian being killed by someone else while they were in power. However, under such circumstances at this time, there was a Guardian who easily destroyed tens of millions of other Guardians, and even left not a trace of their divine souls. How could they calmly accept this change? At this time, the entire world was simply silent, and all the Guardians became cowards, wishing that there was no trace of their existence in this world. Luo Fan was aware of this change, and he only sneered in his heart. At this moment, he did not have the mood to pay attention to the Guardians, and instead, he was focused on continuously refining the tens of millions of Guardian platforms. Of course, this was only the initial refining. To completely refine the Guardian platforms for the current him, he needed to personally go there and truly support the gray flames with his own body in order to be able to do it. Right now, passing the flames over from a distance was obviously not enough. However, it was clear that for him, this was only the initial refinement, and it was already enough. After refining the Guardian platforms, it was equivalent to completely controlling the area where the tokens were located, and it was also equivalent to completely controlling the mysterious power that the platforms possessed. This was obviously of endless benefits for him to study the root and essence of the mysterious power. Moreover, the initial refining of these Guardian platforms was a precondition for complete refining. If he did not initially refine them, how could he pour his power into the platform without any scruples? How could he continuously replace the power in the depths of the Guardian platforms with his own power? This gray flame was sublimated from the mysterious power, and it even transcended time and space. Under such circumstances, by the time the many Guardians calmed down a little, the platforms themselves had already experienced an unknown amount of time, and the gray flame had truly left a deep imprint of Luo Fan in the depths of the Guardian platforms. As these imprints stabilized there, the platforms began to tremble slightly. The originally unrelated platforms began to connect with each other, gradually stringing together, causing the power between them to gradually communicate, and their space-time began to gradually blend. There's actually such a change. At this moment, such a thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind, and an inexplicable surprise appeared in his eyes. This was because he suddenly felt that the many Guardian platforms could actually be moved. It wasn't moving in the ordinary sense, but it was moving on the space-time level. In other words, it didn't mean that they could be moved directly with power, but through the changes in space-time, the connection between the platforms and other space-time could be changed. In other words, in the ordinary sense, after these platforms were moved, they would actually still be in their original positions. And the only thing that changed was the space-time around the platform, changing from the original platform's surroundings to another space-time. With a slight thought, he slightly moved the space-time of the platform he was currently on. In an instant, another platform appeared in front of him. On this platform, there was an incomparably strong aura that belonged to him. And on this platform, there was a woman sitting cross-legged with her eyes closed. Her hands occasionally waved, distorting the surrounding space-time and the surrounding nomological laws. That platform was the first Guardian platform that he had completely refined. And that woman was also Shu Si. At this moment, Shu Si seemed to have sensed something, and she suddenly opened her eyes and looked in the direction of Luo Fan. The moment she saw Luo Fan, her expression changed greatly, and her mouth opened abruptly as a very typical sluggish expression appeared. "How is this possible? How did you do it?" she exclaimed. Shu Si was also a veteran guardian. Although her strength wasn't considered strong, and she was at most average among the guardians, she was still a veteran guardian after all, and it went without saying that she had a keen mind and a lot of knowledge. At this moment, just by looking at Luo Fan's appearance, she suddenly understood what exactly Luo Fan was doing. At this time, Luo Fan didn't answer her at this time. He just smiled slightly, raised his hand, and one guardian platform after another began to appear in the surroundings. These guardian platforms had two things in common. The first thing was that there were no guardians on them. The second thing was that they all had Luo Fan's aura on them. At this time, Shu Si looked at these guardian platforms that had emerged densely and was completely stunned. Previously, she had been working hard to control this area, protect this area, and adjust this area, but she didn't pay attention to the battle between Luo Fan and the tens of millions of guardians. She didn't know what kind of incredible things Luo Fan had done. Under such circumstances, she naturally didn't know that Luo Fan had already taken control of so many guardian platforms in such a short period of time, and even managed to shift the positions of the guardian platforms. It was a terrifying thing that no one had ever done for hundreds of millions of years. "Come on," Luo Fan shouted and raised his hand to grab at the void. In an instant, endless gray flames began to rise from the tens of millions of guardian platforms and began to become stronger and more vigorous under the support of mysterious power. In the end, the tens of millions of guardian platforms turned into tens of millions of gray flames in an instant. If these flames were scattered in tens of millions of areas across the world, they naturally wouldn't amount to anything. At most, it would only make the other guardians who could sense it sigh with emotion. However, now that these guardian platforms were gathered together and piled up in a narrow space, the feeling of the rising flames was obviously completely different. At this moment, in Shu Si's eyes, the surroundings had clearly fallen into a boundless gray sea of fire. Up, down, left, right, front, back, and forth, there were only gray flames in all directions. All her escape routes had obviously been completely cut off. Seeing this, Shu Si couldn't help but reveal a subtle fear on her face. Luo Fan clearly didn't care about the changes in Shu Si's mood. At this moment, his heart stirred slightly. From the platform beneath his feet and the platform beneath Shu Si's feet, a mysterious power surged out and pounced towards the tens of millions of guardian platforms. In an instant, it was injected into the gray flames and began to provide the gray flames with unimaginable power. With this power, the gray flames began to strengthen continuously. In the end, with crackling sounds, they brazenly broke through some kind of limit and stepped into a whole new level. As the flame reached a whole new level, its dusky feeling became even more intense. The surrounding space-time and laws seemed to have been completely cut apart during this process, entering an incomparably strange state. It gradually became more and more distorted, more and more transparent. It was even faintly tainted by the grayness and became dusky, as if it was returning to the primal chaos. As this happened, the gray flames began to shrink inwards, gradually withdrawing back into the platform. They continuously seeped into the source of power in the depths of the platform, continuously replacing that power. Clearly, he wanted to use the help of the two guardian platforms that he had completely refined to completely refine the tens of millions of guardian platforms around him. The guardian platforms were obviously extremely resistant to being completely refined. At this moment, they instinctively began to resist. Powerful shockwaves were constantly released from these platforms, constantly rushing towards the gray flames. They were trying their best to prevent these flames from penetrating into the depths, and to prevent these flames from replacing the essence of the mysterious power. As this happened, the areas guarded by the platforms also began to tremble. Indescribable extraction power was constantly released from the Guardian platforms, acting on those areas and frantically extracting all the mysterious power within them. They worked hard to strengthen their own mysterious power and strengthen their resistance against the gray flames. Unfortunately, the areas guarded by these Guardian platforms had yet to recover from the previous upheaval. At this moment, those areas were still barren. The vitality and civilization within them were already in a state of near extinction. At a glance, those areas even looked extremely barren, as if there was no vitality at all. Under such circumstances, was there a need to say how much mysterious power the Guardian platforms could extract after receiving the support of these areas? It could be said that at this time, these Guardian platforms were only putting up a desperate fight. The effect was extremely small, and it could even be said to be completely non-existent. In this way, the resistance of these platforms towards the gray flames released by Luo Fan was clearly better than nothing. In the end, the platforms retreated step by step. In the end, more and more mysterious power was replaced by the gray flames, which gradually released an increasingly stronger aura that belonged to Luo Fan. This situation seemed very exaggerated. After all, it was two Guardian platforms crushing the tens of millions of Guardian platforms. However, if one looked at what kind of platforms these two were, it was easy to understand the situation. It must be known that the area guarded by the Guardian platform that Shu Si was on had consecutively devoured the mysterious power sent in by the other two groups of Guardian platforms. Among them, the second group had more than 7 million mysterious power, which was almost 10% of the other Guardian platforms. This greatly strengthened the foundation of the Guardian platform, and it was enough to shock any other Guardian platform. It could be said that this Guardian platform alone, after being completely refined by Luo Fan, was actually enough to wrestle with the tens of millions of Guardian platforms at the same time. And now, it was needless to say that the Guardian platform that Luo Fan was on had completely devoured the mysterious power sent in by the tens of millions of Guardian platforms. The advantage it obtained was so great that it was not much inferior to the Guardian platform that Shu Si was on. Under Luo Fan's complete control, it was not difficult to crush the tens of millions of Guardian platforms with such an advantage. With these two platforms combined, it went without saying that the advantage formed over the tens of millions of Guardian platforms was huge. It was simply normal for the Guardian platforms to be at a complete disadvantage in the process and be unable to resist at all. Moreover, the tens of millions of Guardian platforms had almost lost their source of power, and their strength was tens of thousands of times weaker than under normal circumstances. Naturally, Luo Fan understood all of this. However, obviously, he was not in the mood to think about this at this time. At this time, he was only focused on controlling his power to completely refine these Guardian platforms. As he continued to refine it, he felt more and more information coming from those platforms, flowing through his mind and being received by him. This information was contained in the Guardian platforms themselves. Among them, there was the manipulation of the mysterious energy by the countless Guardians, the way the Guardian platform absorbed the mysterious energy, and the strange characteristics of the mysterious energy that the Guardian platform bestowed to the mysterious energy, and so on and so forth. There were all kinds of information, and it was all-inclusive. As expected, this effect is the best. This thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind at this moment, and an inexplicable smile appeared on his face. To him, although this world was vast and boundless, it was grander and vaster than any world he knew. However, it was only a world that was born from his fifth great tribulation. For such a world, no matter how great the power and benefits were, he would not care about it. What he cared about was how to break this world and how to escape the shackles of this world. To achieve this, the only way for him to do so was to be able to get in touch with the mysterious being that seemed to control everything and encompass everything from high above. If he wanted to come into contact with that mysterious power, he naturally had to start from the mysterious power that he could come into contact with now. Therefore, all of his actions, all of his means, and all of his killings were to completely grasp the mysteries of this mysterious power, and ultimately to sublimate that mysterious existence from this mysterious power. Then he would break through this world, and survive this tribulation. His power was endless, and he had an absolute advantage over the many Guardian platforms. However, the Guardian platforms did not have much power to replenish themselves and could only retreat. The final outcome was obvious. In just a few years, the many gray flames that belonged to Luo Fan had almost replaced the power in the depths of the Guardian platforms. At this time, from a certain point of view, the Guardian platforms could be considered to have been completely refined by him. The aura on them and the power that they revealed were almost completely the same as the aura on Luo Fan's body and the power that he revealed. Just as Luo Fan was about to complete the refinement process, and he was only one step away from completely refining the tens of millions of Guardian platforms, the weather suddenly changed. Figures suddenly appeared from the mysterious existence in the sky. Gazes shot out from those figures, penetrated endless space-time, and directly shone on Luo Fan. Chapter 2149. In the face of such a voice descending from the sky, Luo Fan suddenly felt as if he was bearing the endless pressure of the entire world. It was as if this place was incomparably vast, incomparably mysterious, and a certain layer of the world that simulated the state of chaos had already reached its limit of tolerance towards him and could erupt with infinite power at any time to directly erase him. In the face of such a change, his expression changed slightly. His eyes narrowed, and his perception frantically extended upwards, rapidly extending towards that mysterious place. He wanted to experience that mysterious place and grasp all traces within it. If it was before, his perception would naturally have no effect. He could only feel that it was just a void, and it was impossible for him to find any light or shadow within it, let alone discover any existence within it. However, the situation now was obviously different from before. Before, that mysterious existence was filled with natural mysteries, and Luo Fan could not even understand it. So naturally, it was impossible for him to truly come into contact with it. But now, within that mysterious existence, there were things that Luo Fan could understand. Those were figures. In other words, the absolute mysteriousness of that mysterious existence to Luo Fan had now been broken for Luo Fan. Since the absolute mysteriousness had been broken, then Luo Fan naturally had the ability to sense that part of the mysterious existence that had been broken. That was a strange space-time that was between that mysterious existence and normal space-time. In that strange space-time, there was endless mysterious power, and it also included everything that Luo Fan was familiar with, including all the power and all the matter in normal space-time. The entire space-time was boundless, and there was endless energy and matter within it. It had almost everything that a living being could imagine and could not imagine. And at this moment, in that space-time, there were figures standing in the void, and they were far away in the direction of the mysterious existence that Luo Fan could directly come into contact with. It was as if there was a window there, and they were standing in front of it. These figures were densely packed together, and they were practically counted in the hundreds of millions. At a glance, it was impossible to see the end of them, and it was even impossible to count their exact number. Luo Fan did not conceal his perception. At this time, the hundreds of millions of densely packed figures seemed to have sensed his perception at the same time, and the expressions on their faces changed slightly. Evidently, the sharpness and valiance displayed by Luo Fan had already exceeded their expectations. Among the many figures, The one standing at the very front was a middle-aged man with a perfect figure. At this moment, the man said, "You have already violated the rules. Quickly put down everything and ascend." This voice was just like the soft shout from before. It also penetrated and shook everything. And this voice was the same voice that Luo Fan heard just now, asking him to stop. Obviously, the one who spoke just now was also this man. Hearing this, Luo Fan frowned and said, "What rules? Besides, I've never said anything about ascension. The rules are that each guardian can only control one guardian platform. Once the number of guardian platforms exceeds one, it is a violation of the rules. As for ascension, it is naturally to leave the original world and enter our world," the man said plainly. As he spoke, there was an indescribable majesty. It was as if once he opened his mouth, even the rules of the universe would have to change, and even the laws of heaven and earth would have to bypass it. This kind of majesty could be said to be the strongest majesty that Luo Fan had ever felt. In the past, even if he had seen the mark of a sage, the projection of a true sage, or the shadow of a true sage, the degree of majesty he had felt was almost incomparable to that of the middle-aged man in front of him. "Is that so? Who set this rule?" Luo Fan asked plainly. "Of course, it was me," the middle-aged man said plainly. The middle-aged man said faintly. As soon as he finished speaking, his body erupted with an incomparably domineering aura that pressed down on Luo Fan. At the same time, the billions of figures behind him released a terrifying aura at the same time. They descended from the sky and pressed down on Luo Fan. Any one of these figures could not be compared to the current guardians in this world. The aura released by any one of them was enough to shatter space-time and return the world to chaos. Now that the aura of billions of figures had merged together, the terrifying effect was self-evident. In that instant, the billions of space-time in front of the aura were instantly crushed by the aura. Even the rules in this area could not withstand the terrifying aura released by them. Under the control of the aura, it began to naturally change its appearance, state, and combination, forming an extremely strange state. Countless mysterious and complicated lights and shadows appeared. In that instant, in the passage where the aura was transmitted, the world flipped. It was as if the world had been squeezed into an endless space-time in an instant, but it was completely destroyed in an instant, mixing together and stirring. Even Luo Fan could not help but be secretly shocked by such a terrifying aura. Although he was confident, he also knew that if he forcefully withstood such a terrifying aura, while he would not lose his combat ability, his power would definitely be greatly reduced, and his combat ability would be greatly weakened. After all, this was the terrifying aura produced by billions of powerful cultivators. What right do you have to set the rules? In that instant, Luo Fan only said this. Then, he did not hesitate to activate the mysterious power in the two guardian platforms that he had completely refined. They turned into boundless flames and rushed up, brazenly colliding with the numerous auras. In that instant, an extremely terrifying impact erupted. The collision between the auras and the flames was like two extremely real objects colliding with each other. The commotion was so great that it was simply earth-shattering. In the blink of an eye, endless shockwaves began to spread in all directions, completely wiping out more and more areas of space-time. It turned into a strange, dusky state. It was like a dense fog, gradually covering the sky and covering the incomparably mysterious existence that had appeared in the sky. At the same time, the powerful recoil rushed towards the strange space-time of the mysterious existence and the two guardian platforms that Luo Fan had completely refined. At this moment, crackling sounds came from the guardian platforms. It was as if countless details within the guardian platforms had been destroyed by the impact. The platform that Luo Fan stood on began to shake continuously at this moment. It felt as if it would completely collapse in the next moment. Faced with such a change, Luo Fan made a prompt decision. He instantly used the connection between the tens of millions of guardian platforms and himself to directly transmit the terrifying impact to the many Guardian platforms through these connections. As the impact spread out, the light on the tens of millions of Guardian platforms began to sway, as if they had also suffered an unimaginably terrifying impact. At this moment, Luo Fan had a flash of inspiration. He instantly made a decision. With this decision, the impact changed direction and rushed towards the last trace of remaining power in the Guardian platforms. The Guardian platforms originally only had a trace of power left. Even if Luo Fan didn't take any other actions, they could collapse at any time and be replaced by the dusky flames. Now that the power that could completely destroy a Guardian platform was divided and sent into these Guardian platforms, even if it was divided into tens of millions of portions, each portion was enough to mince the last bit of power left. In the blink of an eye, the dusky flames on every single one of the tens of millions of Guardian platforms began to soar. Originally, the flames on the Guardian platforms looked like a dusky sea of fire, but it only looked like it. It wasn't a real sea of fire. But at this moment, the flames on the Guardian platforms soared crazily and connected together. All the power converged at this moment, and all the power was released in an instant, directly turning this space-time into a dusky sea of fire. In this sea of fire, the flames constantly rose, constantly communicated with each other, and constantly fused. Along with this change, the desert-like scene in the tens of millions of Guardian platforms gradually changed. As if some vitality was injected into these Guardian platforms out of thin air, the land regained its vitality, the heat receded, and living beings were revived. This was obviously Luo Fan using his absolute control over these Guardian platforms to revive all the damage in these Guardian platforms. After all, for the previous Luo Fan, these areas were in a barren state, which allowed him to refine the Guardian platforms without much obstruction, making it more convenient and easier for him to completely refine the Guardian platforms. Therefore, he naturally wanted to suppress these Guardian platforms and leave them in this state of desolation. But now, the situation was completely different. Now, he had completely refined these Guardian platforms. In other words, these Guardian platforms had already become the source of his power. Under such circumstances, the more prosperous and powerful these Guardian platforms were, the better it would be. Because of this, he took this action just now. Along with this action, the speed at which the flames on the Guardian platforms rose became faster and faster. Although compared to the original Guardian platforms, which were where Luo Fan and Shu Si were, the other Guardian platforms were still many times weaker. They were still constantly increasing. With tens of millions of Guardian platforms added together, it was self-evident how strong they were as a whole. In the face of this change, Luo Fan only had an indescribable expression on his face. His eyes seemed to see through the boundless, dusky obstruction above, and he saw the mysterious existence behind it, as well as the countless figures within that mysterious existence. At this moment, the expression of the middle-aged man in the lead became extremely ugly. As expected, it was right to make so many preparations, he said faintly. As he said this, he shouted, and the numerous figures among them took action one by one. Their actions were not synchronized, nor were they the same. However, when all of their actions converged together, they triggered the mysterious existence, causing an indescribable power to descend from the mysterious existence, instantly crushing and flattening everything. Under that unknown power, the grayish haze that had covered the sky disappeared. The grayish haze that had soared into the sky and even attacked the mysterious existence began to retreat and shrink under the pressure of this terrifying power. In the end, when the indescribable power directly pressed down on a place not far from where Luo Fan was, the dusky flames were completely suppressed into a layer of transparent cloth, covering the Guardian platforms and the mysterious space formed by the tens of millions of Guardian platforms. At this moment, Luo Fan felt an indescribable and terrifying pressure constantly crushing his body. The pressure was so great that even though he had the greatest support from the tens of millions of Guardian platforms, he still felt extremely powerless. In the end, his body started to creak under the terrifying pressure. Cracks started to appear in the space-time, bones, muscles, organs, and everything else in his body before they started to disappear under his great power. In fact, even at the conceptual level, his concept of existence was also under the pressure of a terrifying concept of existence. There were constant rattling sounds coming from the concept of existence, as if the concept of existence was constantly shattering and was about to turn into powder. What a strange power! This thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind, and the light in his eyes became much brighter. Although this power was so terrifying to him, it was, after all, a brand new power, a power that came from that mysterious existence, a power that he had never come into contact with before. The appearance of this kind of power, of course, represented an even greater danger to him. However, it also meant that he could gain a deeper understanding of that mysterious existence. It meant that he was closer to the true mystery of that mysterious power. Under such circumstances, how could he not feel an indescribable excitement when he sensed danger? Don't underestimate the combined power of tens of millions of Guardian platforms. At this moment, when he felt that the pressure he was enduring had almost reached his limit, he shouted. Following his shout, the tens of millions of Guardian platforms began to tremble violently. During this tremble, the Guardian platforms had already received the terrifying pressure on Luo Fan's body. In an instant, the pressure on those Guardian platforms increased again, and the creaking sounds that came from Luo Fan's body could be heard. Following this change, Luo Fan felt his body lighten, and he instantly regained his freedom. After regaining his freedom, he did not escape. Instead, he constantly manipulated the power that fused into the Guardian platforms, causing them to change. In the end, the space-time where those Guardian platforms were located began to distort and shift continuously. During this shift, the pressure acting on these Guardian platforms still existed, and it was still affecting these Guardian platforms at all times, causing creaking sounds to come from these Guardian platforms all the time. And this also made these Guardian platforms seem like they could completely collapse at any time and turn into countless fragments. This added a lot of danger to the process of shifting. In the end, the positions where these Guardian platforms were shifted did not form a formation. Instead, they were superimposed on the Guardian platform that Luo Fan was on. Space-time was an extremely mysterious existence. Things that could not exist in normal space-time seemed so natural and normal on the space-time plane. This kind of Guardian platform that was constantly superimposed was simply impossible in normal space-time. But at this time, under Luo Fan's manipulation on the space-time plane, these Guardian platforms were superimposed one by one as if they were originally one. Only by superimposing them could they be complete. There was no abruptness at all, and the result of the superposition was not awkward at all. As the Guardian platforms superimposed one after another, the aura of the Guardian platform that Luo Fan was on became stronger and stronger. And although the creaking sounds coming from those Guardian platforms were also constantly increasing, compared to the superposition of the numerous Guardian platforms, it was constantly decreasing. In other words, although the creaking sounds coming from these Guardian platforms were constantly increasing, the magnitude of this increase was much less than the simple superposition of the sounds coming from the Guardian platforms. And as the number of Guardian platforms continued to increase, the magnitude of this decrease was also constantly increasing. The layer of gray flame that was originally suppressed into a thin film by the terrifying power began to rise continuously during this process, and a normal form of the flame began to appear bit by bit in this process. In other words, the flame's resistance to that kind of power began to increase continuously, and gradually, it was about to push the power away. How is this possible? At this moment, the figures in the mysterious existence above all had looks of disbelief on their faces. It was unknown which cultivator said that, but the words echoed in the air. Chapter 2150. At this moment, the tens of millions of Guardian platforms finally overlapped. As they overlapped, Shu Si also appeared beside Luo Fan, but she was directly brought over by the Guardian platform. However, compared to Luo Fan, although the pressure that Shu Si endured was much smaller, her performance was much more miserable. At this moment, she, who was originally a normal person, had been directly reduced to the size of a speck of dust. She was so small that she could not even be noticed. This was also a situation that could only happen to existences at her level. If it was an ordinary creature or cultivator, they would have long turned into minced meat and turned into dust after being crushed by such a terrifying power. Only existences like her could transform this power into pressure that targeted every level, causing her body to shrink along with the crushing power, reducing the damage that the crushing power could do to her to a minimum level. Obviously, at this moment, the effect was quite obvious. At the very least, at this moment, although she looked miserable, at least she would not be completely destroyed by the power, and she would not turn into nothingness. However, this was only temporary. If the power continued to increase and eventually surpass the limit that she could bear, then she would still be crushed into dust by this power and turn into nothingness in the end, be it Shu Si or the others. Everyone knew all of this very clearly. However, it was obvious that Shu Si was the only one who paid attention to this at this moment. Whether it was Luo Fan or the countless creatures in the mysterious existence, they were clearly paying attention to each other at this moment, and not Shu Si, who was just a fish in the pond that was caught in the crossfire. After the tens of millions of Guardian platforms overlapped, the mysterious power within them began to fuse. Their structures also began to affect and complement each other, causing the overall power to increase crazily in the process. It was not an increase of 1 or 2 times, but a crazy increase of thousands or even tens of thousands of times. At this moment, Luo Fan stood there quietly with an indescribable expression on his face. When he raised his head to look at the mysterious existence in the sky, his gaze began to change subtly. As the defensive platform continued to stack and strengthen, the feedback he received became even more massive. Along with this feedback, his gaze and perspective naturally started to change. In the end, the mysterious existence in his eyes gradually unveiled its mysterious veil, gradually allowing him to see more mysteries that he could not see or even think of in the past. As he watched, the mysterious existence began to separate into layers. Among them, the lowest layer was a flat space-time. The flat space-time had infinite space, endless distance, and endless vitality. The entire space-time was rooted in the higher level of the mysterious existence, and it kept absorbing mysterious power from it. It kept filling the flat space-time, maintaining the growth of the space-time, strengthening it, and providing all kinds of power for all the creatures in it. The countless cultivators were actually equivalent to parasites of the mysterious existence living in the flat space-time, constantly absorbing nutrients from it. While constantly strengthening themselves, they constantly weakened the space-time and even weakened the mysterious existence. Faced with such changes, Luo Fan only smiled faintly. "So you're just parasites. I was wondering who you were." His voice was very calm and even very weak, but it easily penetrated all obstacles and directly entered the mysterious existence into the space-time and was heard by all the creatures in it. Hearing his words, the expressions of most of the cultivators changed drastically. The middle-aged leader seemed to have been humiliated, and his aura began to inexplicably become chaotic. "You deserve to die." With this roar, the flat space-time began to tremble slightly, and the absorption of power from the mysterious existence began to increase crazily. In the end, the crushing force began to increase continuously, and instead, the gray flame that had begun to gradually rise was suddenly crushed, and it began to return to its original thin film form. This state made Luo Fan show a strange smile on his face. It was as if this change in front of him was simply what he wanted to see. "I'll give you 2 choices, either ascend or die," the middle-aged man said coldly at this moment, and his words contained an indescribable desolation. It was as if the entire world had become a world of slaughter, a Shura battlefield. The world suddenly changed color at this moment, and it seemed that an extremely dense black fog directly enveloped the entire world, causing all the existences in it to feel an indescribable chill in their hearts. However, all of this did not make Luo Fan feel uncomfortable at all. On the contrary, his smile became even more obvious. "It seems that all of you should have reached your limit," he suddenly said. When these words spread out, all the living beings in the flat space-time were slightly shocked. Some of their faces showed confusion, while others showed shock and anger. These various reactions clearly prove that these cultivators did not seem to know the current situation of the flat space-time at this time. At least, it seemed that they did not know. "It seems that you have done a good job in keeping it a secret," Luo Fan sighed. His voice instantly made the expression of the middle-aged man in the lead become more and more unsightly. "It seems that you don't plan to ascend. In that case, I can only apologize." The middle-aged man suppressed the emotions in his heart and sighed. With such a sigh, he suddenly raised his hand towards where Luo Fan was, which was the place where the tens of millions of platforms were stacked together. It looked exactly the same as before, but it had been snatched away by an unknown number of millions of times. As he squeezed, the endless strange power that descended from the mysterious existence began to quickly condense and eventually turned into a huge palm in the void. It quickly approached Luo Fan with a terrifying momentum that could destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth. It wanted to crush him. At this moment, in Luo Fan's eyes, the mysterious existence on the higher level above the flat space-time trembled slightly, and a strange power seeped into the flat space-time, causing the flat space-time to tremble slightly, and the various internal environments began to collapse continuously. With just a glance, an area of thousands of light years had been completely destroyed in an instant, and once again turned into mysterious power that rushed up, returning to the mysterious existence on the higher level. This change finally made the many cultivators discover the changes in the world. For a time, an inexplicable disturbance arose among the many cultivators. "What's going on? Isn't this the land of heavenly Tao closest to the heavenly Tao? Why is there such a change?" In the eyes of the many cultivators, and even in the eyes of the endless guardians in this world, this flat space-time was the land of heavenly Tao. And that mysterious existence was obviously the heavenly Tao in their eyes. In this way, the power that seeped from the mysterious existence was naturally the power of heavenly Tao. Heavenly Tao? This name seems to be accurate. This thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind as he listened to their words. The mysterious existence was only because Luo Fan didn't understand it at all. He didn't understand it at all. It naturally didn't just represent mystery. Once he truly understood the mysterious power, he would naturally be able to extract the essence of the mysterious power from it and finally understand what it should be called. From a certain point of view, the numerous guardians in this world call the all-encompassing, boundless, and seemingly omnipotent power the power of heavenly Tao. Compared to Luo Fan calling it the mysterious power, it seemed to be more accurate and could better summarize the characteristics of the mysterious power. After all, the heavenly Tao itself was an existence that was somewhat similar but also somewhat different from the great Tao. Such an existence was as all-encompassing as the great Tao and contained almost all the mysteries that could and could not be imagined. Moreover, it was also something that ordinary cultivators couldn't understand or even sense. As this thought flashed through his mind, the image of the mysterious existence in his eyes seemed to have subtly changed. It was as if he was one step closer to the legendary heavenly Tao. Obviously, his understanding had in turn affected the appearance of the mysterious existence in his eyes, or rather, the appearance of the mysterious existence to him. In the face of such a change, Luo Fan sighed. He had already understood that his way of thinking was indeed closer to the essence of that mysterious power. Sure enough, in the end, I still need to communicate with other cultivators in this world to reduce the difficulty of comprehending something. If I had known what these powers were in the eyes of these cultivators, I might have been able to extract more mysteries. As he sighed, the countless gray flames that rose from his feet began to change. They gradually turned from gray flames into another form. They seemed to have turned into liquid but also seemed to have turned into a river. They began to surge around the platform and gradually turned into a spiral shape. Its target was the palm that was descending from the sky. The palm was extremely powerful at this moment. It directly treated Luo Fan as its target and descended without any scruples. Even though the flat space-time was trembling and collapsing, it did not change its thoughts or its target at all. It seemed that to the middle-aged man, getting rid of Luo Fan was more important than the flat space-time, or in other words, the heavenly Tao. The power that condensed the palm itself was a supreme power that surpassed space-time, and the long river that Luo Fan condensed was also a means that surpassed space-time. Under such circumstances, the impact of the collision between the two powers that surpassed space-time was obvious. However, it was as if they did not exist, and they collided in an instant. With a deafening rumble, endless time and space, endless heaven and earth, endless laws, and endless living beings were born from the collision. Then, they were completely destroyed by the impact of the next collision, disappearing without a trace. At this moment, the middle-aged man's eyes emitted an endless, ferocious glint. Power surged all over his body, and endless power flowed endlessly inside and outside his body. As he moved, the vibration of the entire flat space-time became even more intense. The absorption of the mysterious existence, or rather, the heavenly Tao, also increased by many times. This undoubtedly made the palm that was condensed from the power absorbed from the heavenly Tao become even more powerful, allowing it to gradually gain the upper hand in the collision with the long river that Luo Fan condensed. However, it was also because of this that the heavenly Tao's pressure on the flat space-time, which was also the heavenly Tao's land, became even greater. The vibration of the flat space-time became even more intense, and the space-time within it collapsed even faster. Pathmaster, what are you doing? Do you want to destroy the heavenly Tao? One by one, the cultivators began to roar and question the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man was the ruler of the heavenly Tao, so he was naturally addressed as the Pathmaster. Can't you see it now? In order for the heavenly Tao to continue to exist, more guardians must be added. This person has gathered the power of tens of millions of guardian platforms. Once he joins, the heavenly Tao will be able to exist for billions of years. The Pathmaster shouted coldly. Hearing this, the cultivators were all astonished. Among them, some suddenly came to a realization, while others seemed to have suffered an indescribable blow to their hearts, and their eyes became dull. Those who were suddenly enlightened clearly understood why the Taoist master was so determined to attack Luo Fan and wanted to integrate him into the heavenly Tao land. After all, the speed of cultivation in the heavenly Tao land was countless times faster than below. Allowing the guardian to enter the heavenly Tao land was simply giving them endless benefits. In this way, even if the Taoist master was unwilling, it would only be a loss for the Taoist master. Why must he be so persistent? Even if it was to uphold the rules, it was still a little too much. Now, after receiving the Pathmaster's explanation, they finally understood that the Pathmaster was doing this for the sake of the heavenly Tao's existence, for the sake of the existence of their cultivation environment. Immediately, those who came to a realization naturally joined the Pathmaster without any hesitation. Their respective powers began to be injected into the Pathmaster's body through various mysterious methods. They were controlled by the Pathmaster and began to be used to guide the power of the heavenly Tao, making it much easier for the Pathmaster. However, the remaining cultivators who were still in a daze reacted differently. Every single one of these cultivators had been guardians for a very long time. Guardians like them had spent their entire lives protecting a certain area of the heavenly Tao. They had dedicated their power and wisdom to the heavenly Tao. Under such circumstances, although a large portion of the guardians cared more about themselves than the heavenly Tao, there were also some guardians who viewed the heavenly Tao as more important than themselves. They treated the heavenly Tao as an existence that surpassed themselves. Because of this, at this moment, they actually discovered that the place they originally thought to be a cultivation paradise was actually not a real paradise, but a parasite of the heavenly Tao. It was a pest that continuously extracted energy from the heavenly Tao to strengthen itself. How could they not be shocked? At this instant, all sorts of struggles, pain, anger, regret, and humiliation surged madly in their hearts. They intertwined together and caused their expressions to become like this. How could they have decided to help the so-called Pathmaster so quickly? The Pathmaster and the other cultivators didn't care about them. Right now, to them, the most important thing was to defeat Luo Fan. Only by defeating him could they absorb all of his power and absorb it into the heavenly Tao so that the heavenly Tao could continue to exist. As for the other cultivators' dissatisfaction, struggle, and pain, they didn't care at all. In their hearts, no matter how dissatisfied those cultivators were, it was impossible for them to stop them at this moment. After all, these cultivators had already fused with the heavenly Tao. If something happened to the heavenly Tao, it would be a huge problem for them as well. It was even possible for them to die and their souls to scatter. Facing the Pathmaster who had the help of so many cultivators, Luo Fan felt more and more pressure. Although the power of the tens of millions of Guardian platforms was powerful and the mysterious power they possessed was immense, the area that the Guardian platforms guarded had only just recovered from the barren state. In this state, the help they could provide to the Guardian platforms was naturally limited. In other words, the Guardian platforms weren't at their peak yet. The power they could display was only 1,000th of their original peak state, and that was already ridiculously strong. Chapter 21:51. However, there was no worry on Luo Fan's face at this moment. Instead, he remained strangely calm. Previously, his action of gathering the many Guardian platforms did not conform to the fundamental laws of this world, so he was rejected by the world. He constantly felt an indescribable pressure enveloping his heart during the process, which made him feel slightly worried. He was worried that this method would fail. However, it was obvious that the situation was completely different now. At this moment, he clearly knew that his resistance to the heavenly law land was in line with the fundamental laws of this world. And this kind of compliance with the rules naturally made him feel as if he was blessed by the entire world. All of his methods, plans, and calculations would succeed, and he would obtain unimaginable benefits. Under such a situation, even if the situation had become so grim, he didn't feel that he was about to fail. Instead, he clearly knew that there would be some sort of change in the future, and this change would definitely allow him to obtain the final victory. Faced with such a situation, one could imagine how calm Luo Fan felt. He quietly waited for the world's reaction and the appearance of the change. Of course, he did not entrust his life to this feeling. Even at this moment, he was absolutely confident that even if he failed, he would definitely be able to escape and not be affected by all these changes. It was precisely because he was absolutely confident that he would be able to protect himself that he waited like this at this moment. After all, he was only letting go of this plan this time. Using the success of this plan to obtain an even greater result was really worth it. If his life was really threatened, even if the feeling in his heart was so obvious and intense, he would definitely not just wait here quietly. Instead, he would definitely take other actions. Nothing was important. Only his own life was the most important. At this moment, the palm controlled by the many cultivators above gradually gained the absolute upper hand. The suppression of the mysterious river formed by Luo Fan's mysterious power became stronger and stronger. The distance between it and Luo Fan, as well as the huge platform formed by the tens of millions of Guardian platforms, gradually began to shrink. Under such a situation, Luo Fan seemed to be in a precarious situation. He seemed like he would be completely crushed by the palm in the next moment and turned into dust. At this moment, Shu Si, who had already turned into the size of a speck of dust beside Luo Fan, began to scream. "Hurry up and resist. Aren't you very strong?" Although her voice was sharp, it did not spread very far under the terrifying pressure. Even Luo Fan, who was beside her, only heard the voice because he was too close and his senses were very sharp. However, hearing the voice did not mean that he had to do as it said. At this moment, he casually grabbed at the air and caught Shu Si in his hand. He raised his hand and opened it, placing it in front of him. At this moment, Shu Si was already the size of a speck of dust. In her eyes, Luo Fan's palm had already turned into a boundless continent. The continent was so vast and huge that it felt like it could only be described in light years. If it was an ordinary cultivator, it would be impossible to easily grab Shu Si in such a state. However, at this moment, under Luo Fan's actions, Shu Si did not sense anything unusual. She discovered that the appearance of the place she was at had completely changed. The ground beneath her had changed into a continent that rose and fell, as if it contained countless space-time. After a while, Shu Si finally returned to her senses and realized what was going on. She knew that she was already in Luo Fan's hand. For a moment, an inexplicable displeasure and peace of mind rose in her heart, causing Shu Si's expression to become somewhat complicated. "Don't worry. Even if we fail, I can still take you away." Luo Fan smiled. He had a rather good impression of Shu Si. If it was possible, he did not want to see Shu Si die just like that. Obviously, if Shu Si was left here and he didn't bring her along when he left, then the only thing that awaited Shu Si was death. Approaching, Shu Si was not Luo Fan. She did not have the ability to remain unscathed under such a powerful force. Hearing this, Shu Si sighed and didn't say anything else. Of course, part of it was because her safety was guaranteed. More importantly, Luo Fan seemed to be very clear-headed, and his ability was still so profound. The previous guess that he had gone mad was obviously not true. Since he wasn't crazy, it was clear that he had his own plan for him to wait quietly like this. All the time, the results of all of Luo Fan's plans had been imprinted in her heart. She had unknowingly placed her confidence in his plans to an unimaginable height. Now that she found out that Luo Fan was making another plan, she instinctively settled down and even began to have an inexplicable expectation in her heart. Luo Fan naturally did not know that there were so many changes in Shu Si's thoughts. At this moment, he calmly looked up at the palm that was crushing towards him. Below the palm, countless fine liquid light spots splashed everywhere. It was caused by the long river formed by the mysterious power that he had condensed being crushed. The power was constantly dissipating at this moment and continuously integrated into the surrounding space-time. Gradually, the space-time underwent all kinds of subtle changes. It seemed that because of absorbing the mysterious power, the foundation and potential were constantly increasing. Of course, foundation was only foundation after all, and potential was only potential after all. In order to transform the foundation into strength, a process was still needed. In order to stimulate the potential, some time was needed. And now, it was obvious that what Luo Fan lacked the most was time. Therefore, all kinds of enhancements did not seem to be of any benefit to him in his current state. Suddenly, Luo Fan's eyes flashed as if something he had been looking forward to finally happened. At that moment, a cultivator's body suddenly began to swell in the heavenly Tao realm. Boundless mysterious energy began to be released in a frenzy, violently crashing into the heavenly Tao realm itself. It began to merge with the boundless energy that was pouring into the heavenly Tao realm from above, causing extreme damage to the entire heavenly Tao realm. "Are you crazy?" The cultivators around him were all dumbfounded and shouted loudly. "I'm crazy. I didn't expect that I would forget my original heart for so many years." The cultivator roared at this moment. His voice contained a deep sense of relief, as if he had finally let go of the shackles that had been on him for billions of years. As he spoke, his body suddenly shook and suddenly collapsed. It turned into a mysterious power that was like a hurricane and directly blasted a hole in the heavenly Tao that was getting bigger and bigger. Some of the surrounding cultivators could not dodge in time and were actually involved in the explosion. The mysterious power in their bodies also exploded at this moment and turned into a new source of destructive power, causing the power of the explosion to increase crazily. I didn't expect him to get ahead of me. A cultivator not far away sighed at this moment. An indescribable sense of relief appeared on his face. His body began to swell like the previous cultivator, and the mysterious power in his body began to be released even more violently than the previous cultivator, causing the result to be even more violent. Following their actions, the other cultivators reacted one after another. Almost everywhere in this flat heavenly Tao, there were cultivators like this who made the same choice. They detonated the endless mysterious power that they had absorbed from the heavenly Tao and directly attacked the heavenly Tao, destroying it. Crazy. Crazy. They've all gone crazy. At this moment, the cultivators who did not make the same choice continuously began to shout at this moment. The cultivators began to run in all directions, away from the source of the explosion. They wanted to protect their lives as much as possible in this kind of explosion. However, it was clear that this was not very possible. After all, the cultivators did not gather in one place to take action. They scattered to different locations and took action on their own. In other words, although most of the cultivators had chosen to self-destruct at this moment, detonating all the mysterious power that they had absorbed to destroy the heavenly Tao, there were also some who did not take action immediately. However, there were also some who did not take action immediately. Instead, they were waiting for the right opportunity to take action. And this opportunity might come when the fleeing cultivators came to their side. Thus, in this kind of chaos, although the cultivators were running around, they were unable to find a safe place. Perhaps a cultivator who seemed to be as crazy as them would suddenly have a great change in expression, and in the midst of shout of relief, he would directly blow himself up. This kind of deceptive thing happened one after another, finally making the cultivators unable to trust anyone else. They all began to look at other cultivators with extreme vigilance. The direction in which they fled also began to avoid the other cultivators, trying their best to stay as far away from any other cultivators as possible. In this way, the cultivators gradually scattered during this process. Following this commotion and chaos, the cultivators' support for the middle-aged man in the lead naturally dissipated. Moreover, because their previous support was taken away, it even took away a part of the middle-aged man's power and shackled a part of his energy, causing him to perform even worse than before. Damn it! Are you all crazy? What does the heavenly Tao have to do with you? We cultivators pursue transcendence and eternity. You're all abandoning your lives for the heavenly Tao. Have you all forgotten your fundamental pursuit? The middle-aged man shouted at this moment. No, you're wrong. What we pursue is first protection, then transcendence, and then eternity. At this moment, a voice entered the middle-aged man's ears. Immediately afterward, an extremely terrifying, mysterious power suddenly exploded beside him, turning into endless destruction that rushed toward him. It was as if the sky and earth were crazily crushing him. At this moment, the middle-aged man was shocked. He quickly reversed the power and set up layer after layer of protection around his body, forming layers of space-time and barriers to resist this destruction. Compared to the other cultivators, his strength was more than a level stronger. In fact, in this heavenly Tao, this middle-aged man was almost equivalent to Luo Fan in the second level of the Tao Master Path. He had an absolute advantage and could even easily crush all the cultivators and existences in this heavenly Tao. At a time like this, even if it was done in a hurry, even if the destructive power was so powerful that it could easily kill thousands of cultivators here at the same time, it was still not enough. However, under his protection, the endless destruction power did not invade his body at all. It did not really hurt him at all. In the end, all the power completely bypassed him, causing the space-time around his body to be completely destroyed. Only the space-time around his body was left unscathed. You deserve to die. The middle-aged man roared angrily at this moment. An inexplicable anger appeared on his face. It was the anger that arose from being betrayed. Although he was unhappy that those cultivators attacked the heavenly Tao, he did not actually feel betrayed. After all, this was a difference in ideals, and the other party had already given up their lives to carry out this ideal. Under such circumstances, he could be angry and go crazy, but he would never think that they had betrayed him. However, it was different now. Now, those cultivators wanted to kill him. They would even rather detonate themselves to perish together with him. They wanted to turn everything he had into nothingness and make him lose his life. This was obviously a blatant betrayal. Being betrayed was obviously the easiest thing to do to make people lose their rationality. At this moment, the middle-aged man in front of him felt a strong sense of betrayal. However, very soon his eyes flickered slightly. His body quickly broke through the chaos around him and fled into the distance. This was because hundreds of cultivators were rushing toward him. The mysterious power in these cultivators' bodies expanded wildly during this process. They were constantly trying to break free from the restraints of their bodies. They were trying to explode and release their strongest power. Based on the look in their eyes, it was clear that they had already given up their lives and were ready to completely abandon everything about themselves. Even though he was much stronger than these cultivators, he could not safely defend against the terrifying attack that they had unleashed by giving up everything they had. After all, no matter how strong he was, how could he stop others from choosing their own deaths? How lively! At this moment, an inexplicable voice entered the middle-aged man's ears. This voice terrified him. He suddenly raised his head and looked at the window that corresponded to the outside of the heavenly Tao. Sure enough, there was no palm there, nor was there any occasion. There was only a figure floating quietly on a platform, quietly looking down at them. That was Luo Fan. However, the chaos in the heavenly Tao had caused the middle-aged man to lose control of the power that he had drawn from the heavenly Tao. This caused the power of the palm to spread out and gradually lose its cohesion. This kind of power originally had a flaw, but now it had increased to 10,000 flaws. In this way, it was easy to imagine the effect of this method against Luo Fan. With just a thought, Luo Fan once again triggered a mysterious force. He didn't even need to turn to the long river, but directly turned into a grayish flame and easily drilled into the interior of the palm, directly igniting the palm from the inside. During this process, the palm seemed to have turned into endless gray flames in the blink of an eye. It no longer posed any threat to him. Instead, it was under his control and became his power. At this moment, Luo Fan had an indescribable feeling. This power was not forcefully subdued by his methods. Instead, it was taking the initiative to get close to him and become his power. After understanding this, he understood that the change he had been waiting for had appeared. Immediately, he activated the platform that was formed from tens of millions of guardian platforms under his feet without any hesitation. He drew out the endless mysterious power and began to fuse it with the gray flames above him, causing the flames to sublimate and evolve again and again. In the end, the color of the flames completely disappeared, and the gray flames became completely transparent. This kind of flame had endless power. If it was released, it would not be damaged, even if billions of worlds were destroyed. However, at this moment, the flames were extremely gentle and obedient. They did not even distort space at all. As for the laws and laws, they completely ignored them. They quietly floated in the void like transparent shadows. Chapter 2152. A faint smile hung on Luo Fan's face. Along with his control, the illusory flames started to rise and wrapped around the flames that were transformed from his palm as they moved towards the heavenly Tao ground. They rapidly approached the heavenly Tao ground, and not long after, they had spread to the heavenly Tao ground and enveloped the entire heavenly Tao ground. The flames weren't ordinary flames, but flames that were of a higher grade than the grayish flames. The power and profoundness of the flames had reached an unimaginable level. As the flames enveloped the heavenly Tao land, Luo Fan felt as if it was under his control all of a sudden. He could sense all the changes in it. In an instant, He understood the principles of the heavenly Tao land and how subtle the relationship between the heavenly Tao land and the heavenly Tao above was. Although the heavenly Tao land was named after the heavenly Tao, it was actually a parasite of the heavenly Tao. It used an extremely subtle and mysterious method to extend its tentacles into the heavenly Tao. It constantly absorbed mysterious energy from the heavenly Tao to stabilize and strengthen itself. It also nurtured the countless cultivators that lived in it. Then it borrowed the power of the countless cultivators to strengthen the heavenly Tao land. In turn, it strengthened the heavenly Tao land's erosion of the heavenly Tao and its absorption of mysterious energy. In this manner, the heavenly Tao land continued to grow stronger, but at the same time, it weakened the heavenly Tao. Of course, the degree of weakening was still insignificant compared to the entire heavenly Tao. After all, it was the heavenly Tao that could even control all the details and mysteries of the entire world. Even if the heavenly Tao land had absorbed billions of years of energy from it, it was still insignificant compared to the heavenly Tao land as a whole. However, no matter how insignificant it was, a parasite was still a parasite. Constantly stealing nutrients from it was the same as stealing nutrients. To the heavenly Tao, to the world, the heavenly Tao land was a den of thieves. The living beings in the heavenly Tao land were all thieves. Under such circumstances, it could be said that these cultivators had already committed a crime against the heavens. Unless they could truly break free from the shackles of this world and truly obtain great power and transcend, they would inevitably encounter endless bottlenecks in their cultivation. It was even more impossible for them to break through. This was actually the reason why the living beings in this heavenly Tao land were so weak and small. Luo Fan easily understood almost everything about the heavenly Tao. He knew that this was the best opportunity for him to comprehend the mysterious existence known as the heavenly Tao. As long as he could deal with the land of heavenly Tao, he would be able to return all the resources and power he had stolen from the land of heavenly Tao back to the mysterious existence, which was the heavenly Tao. He would naturally be able to gain the favor of the heavenly Tao. And at that time, he would naturally have a chance to explore the heavenly Tao and personally sense the mysteries and principles within it. Understanding this, how could Luo Fan give up such a good opportunity? After he chuckled, he suddenly raised his hand and grabbed at the heavenly Tao place. In the blink of an eye, a palm brazenly penetrated the barrier of the heavenly Tao place and directly reached into the endless chaos within. As it passed through the endless flames, the palm was instantly ignited and turned into a flaming palm that grabbed at the middle-aged man in the depths of the heavenly Tao place. Using the help of the flames to sense the heavenly Tao place, Luo Fan already knew that the middle-aged man was actually the ruler of the heavenly Tao place. Of course, this kind of ruler was slightly different from a ruler who truly had complete control over everything. This kind of ruler did not have the authority to meet an absolute ruler by chance. This kind of ruler was more because he had contributed too much to the heavenly Tao place, which was why the heavenly Tao place had taken a liking to him. This kind of ruler status was not enough for him to become omnipotent in the heavenly Tao place, but it was enough for him to become one with the heavenly Tao place to a certain extent. Although this kind of connection would allow him to obtain great benefits, it would also cause a certain amount of damage to the heavenly Tao place if he was injured. As such, if Luo Fan wanted to deal with the heavenly Tao place, the best and easiest way was, of course, to deal with this ruler first. The middle-aged man was originally avoiding the suicidal attacks of other cultivators when he suddenly heard Luo Fan's voice. Then, he discovered that the palm was descending from the sky, as if it was connected to him, and quickly attacked him. In an instant, an indescribable panic arose in his heart. Immediately, he frantically struggled and tried his best to mobilize the mysterious power to attack the palm. At this moment, he could clearly feel that if he was hit by the suicidal attacks of other cultivators, he would at most be injured. At most, he would have to abandon his current body. However, If he was caught by the palm before him, then what awaited him would be death and his soul dispersing. There was no other possibility. Faced with this kind of situation, it was all too easy to make a choice. Immediately, almost all of his mysterious power blasted towards a flaming palm and directly collided with it. As the ruler of the heavenly Tao place, this cultivator's understanding and mastery of the mysterious power far surpassed that of the other guardians. At this moment, the mysterious power did not simply collide with the palm violently. Instead, it underwent some kind of subtle transformation as it collided with the palm. Under this transformation, the nature of the mysterious power began to continuously change. In the end, it turned into a sharp sword that brazenly pierced through space-time and smashed deep into the flaming palm. It clashed with the palm in an extremely tragic manner. During this collision, the flaming palm suddenly collapsed. Countless holes appeared on both the top and bottom of the palm. Endless flames and mysterious power began to quickly surge out from the holes. Quite a good use. At this moment, an indescribable smile appeared on Luo Fan's face as he sighed inwardly. This method of transforming the mysterious energy into a sharp sword was not as simple as condensing the mysterious energy into a physical form. One also needed to have an extremely deep understanding of the mysterious energy and an unimaginable understanding of the essence of the sword. Only then would one be able to condense the two together. Only then would one be able to condense the sword that was condensed from the mysterious energy into a form that did not have any substance. It was obvious that the middle-aged man's method was such a method. It was a method that had endless power and had unleashed the nature of the sword to its limit. Luo Fan did not possess this method in the past. However, it was only in the past. At this moment, when the flaming palm was struck, he had already sensed it and naturally grasped this transformation. Thus, he could also create such an attack. After all, at the end of the day, Luo Fan's understanding of the mysterious power was not inferior to the middle-aged man's. Since the middle-aged man could comprehend it, Luo Fan would naturally be able to comprehend it as well with a slight hint from him. However, at this moment, the middle-aged man was no longer in the mood to be excited about his results. This was because after being delayed by Luo Fan's attack, he was already surrounded by the other cultivators. Waves of terrifying, mysterious power erupted around his body. The terrifying impact surged towards him and crushed him in a frenzy. It directly crushed his body, penetrated his soul, penetrated his life source, and crushed his concept of existence. At this moment, the middle-aged man realized that he had still underestimated the others. The strength of their suicidal attacks was far beyond his imagination. How could the impact at this moment only cause him to lose his physical body and damage his power as he had thought? It was simply a threat to his life. At that moment, an incomparably mournful cry came from where the middle-aged cultivator was. As he screamed, his power surged, and endless waves of impact were released from where he was. During this process, the heavenly Tao began to shake violently. The absorption of the heavenly Tao seemed to have suddenly decreased. This decrease was not much compared to the absorption of the heavenly Tao by the entire heavenly Tao. However, at this moment, the heavenly Tao's resistance towards the heavenly Tao had reached its most intense level. While a large number of cultivators in the entire heavenly Tao were constantly destroying themselves to destroy the heavenly Tao, this increase in strength was like the last straw that broke the camel's back. Finally, the entire heavenly Tao began to emit cracking sounds. In the end, from the inside out, from the top to the bottom, from every inch of the area that could be seen with the naked eye, and even the areas that could not be seen with the naked eye and could not be sensed by the naked eye, began to shatter. An inexplicable joy appeared in the hearts of countless cultivators out of nowhere. This joy came from no reason, but it made them feel as if it came from the depths of their hearts. This was none other than the joy produced by the heavenly Tao. There are still many backup plans that have yet to be used. Luo Fan let out a sigh at this moment. The collapse of the land of heavenly Tao was much faster than he had imagined. Initially, he still had many tricks up his sleeves to completely destroy the heavenly Tao. However, he did not expect that a single palm strike from him would be able to almost kill the middle-aged cultivator and cause the flat heavenly Tao to almost completely disappear. At this moment, a buzzing sound came from Luo Fan's hand. Immediately after, Shu Xi's body began to grow rapidly. She grew from the size of a speck of dust to the size of a normal person in the blink of an eye. In the end, she turned into a huge figure and stood on Luo Fan's palm. Shu Xi's eyes were filled with an inexplicable sense of loss. Following this, a mysterious light began to appear on her body. This mysterious light was extremely mysterious. It expanded and contracted as if it was breathing. It faintly resonated with the heavenly Tao above it, as if it was constantly absorbing some sort of nourishment from the heavenly Tao to promote its own growth. At this moment, in the face of this change, Luo Fan only had an inexplicable sense of doubt on his face. Why is it her? She clearly didn't do anything and didn't contribute anything. Why is she the one benefiting? With Luo Fan's knowledge, he naturally knew that this scene was a sign that Shu Xi was continuously receiving benefits from the heavenly Tao above her. However, this surprised him even more. After all, Shu Xi had always been under his protection. Not only did she not contribute anything, but she was also not a burden to him. He was already giving her face. However, under such circumstances, the heavenly Tao actually gave her benefits instead of him, who had done all this and even indirectly destroyed the power of the heavenly Tao. How could he not be surprised? However, it was obvious that the heavenly Tao would not care about his surprise, nor would it give him an explanation. At this moment, the mysterious existence was only constantly resonating with the mysterious light on Shu Xi's body and continuously injecting something extremely mysterious into Shu Xi's body. Following these changes, Shu Xi's aura began to grow at a speed visible to the naked eye. The number of steps she took in the tribulation initiation realm became faster and faster, and her strides became bigger and bigger. Finally, at a certain moment, her body suddenly turned into a ray of light and shot up, rushing towards the heavenly Tao. Luo Fan frowned. At this moment, he released his perception and instantly enveloped Shu Xi. After all, the mysterious power in Shu Xi's body came from the Guardian platform under Luo Fan's feet. Obviously, he had already completely refined the Guardian platform. All the energy within the protective platform had been branded with his mark. Under such circumstances, it could also be said that Shu Xi's body had already been deeply branded by him. In this way, if he wanted to invade Shu Xi's body with his perception, directly envelop her, and sense everything about her, it would naturally be a matter of a thought. Shu Xi's speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, she had already crossed a distance of billions of miles and directly entered the mysterious existence above, which was the heavenly Tao. As she entered, Luo Fan felt endless information constantly surging towards him through his perception. The information was so messy and complicated. It felt as if all the information in the endless world had swarmed in at this moment and was about to completely drown him. At this moment, Luo Fan's eyes became a little dazed. Even his head felt swollen, as if his mind was about to completely collapse and be destroyed under the impact in the next moment. Luo Fan stood there quietly with an indescribable expression on his face. There was a rather strange look on his face. The information was all-encompassing. Although it did not directly contain the essence of the mysterious existence, there was a side description of it. He believed that as long as he could sort out the information, he would eventually be able to comprehend some of the mysteries of the mysterious existence. At this moment, he no longer had the mood to consider why Shu Xi received such treatment and was directly led into the mysterious existence to receive the information. He did not have the mood to pay attention to the details of how the heavenly Tao land collapsed, how the fragments collapsed, how they were destroyed, how they turned into countless meteorites that fell into the sky, and how they smashed into the ground, space-time, and laws, causing all sorts of unbelievable phenomena. He did not have a mood to care about the countless living beings in it, the fate of the countless cultivators, whether they were alive or dead, what sort of punishment or reward awaited them if they were alive, what sort of death it would be, how thorough it would be, or if it was just a formality. Compared to the information that he was continuously obtaining from the mysterious existence through Shu Si, everything was so insignificant and not even worth mentioning. At this moment, the entire world began to tremble slightly. The mysterious existence that was originally hidden was completely revealed. No matter where they were, all living beings in the world would be able to look up and see the existence of this mysterious existence. They would also be able to see the collapse of the heavenly Tao land. Of course, only the truly powerful guardians were able to see the true appearance of the heavenly Tao land. To most cultivators, the collapse of the heavenly Tao land was just a few sparks on the mysterious existence that appeared out of thin air. The sparks scattered in all directions and continued to collapse. This did not intimidate them at all. Instead, they felt that the mysterious existence was so beautiful and magical. Their hearts naturally gave birth to all sorts of indescribable feelings of yearning. Perhaps from today onwards, countless cultivators would also treat the mysterious existence as their goal to strive for. Their goal of cultivation would be the same as Luo fans. The effect of the tens of millions of Guardian platforms stacked together was gradually starting to show. The stacking did not completely connect the area guarded by the tens of millions of Guardian platforms. However, in terms of space-time, they completely formed a whole.